There's no time.
The time is
13
o'clock. Hey folks, it's episode 171, our Thanksgiving special.
Yeah. Thanksgiving around the corner.
It is, yeah. This is going to go up a couple of days before Thanksgiving if you're in the United States.
It's ridiculous. What's the show going to be about, Jenny?
Well, I'm doing kind of like, sort of like I did on the Halloween one, where it's just kind of like a variety show. I just want to talk about like real history Thanksgiving and then kind of get into like kind of the darker side of colonial history. I want to talk about the Pequot War. I want to talk about the first murderer in colonial America. I want to hear
dark
about
Thanksgiving.
Sort of. Yeah.
Okay.
You know. Oh, and I also want to talk about some recent. Well, it's not that recent, but it's kind of a recent thing where they discovered that there may have been cannibalism in Jamestown, the first American settlement. Right. So they had suspected it, but they found like physical evidence of it.
They were getting hungry.
So, well, clearly. But yeah, it's pretty nasty. But yeah, so this is kind of just going to be like a Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving adjacent type of show. We'll probably end up talking about food too, because we usually do that.
It's fucking ridiculous. We're trying to diet right before Thanksgiving.
I know, we're stupid.
It's ridiculous. I've been bulking, you know, on a bulking plan diet. I'm getting so big, I'm getting stretch marks on my fucking...
I know, he's like pregnant, but in his arms.
Getting stretch marks underneath here. The bitches is just swelling up like that. And what was funny is it started when I started working out less.
Yeah.
More recovery time. More time to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going for like lifting 3 times a week to about 2 times a week. Sometimes 1 time a week. And it just... yeah. Bizarre, but I was doing it for a year, so I guess I'd been sending the right signals to do it to go locust.
Yeah,
that's when a motherfucker goes locust. You go from grasshopper to locust.
We were just talking about that earlier this afternoon. Talking about this fucking big ass fucking.
Just had to give it time to grow.
Yeah.
But so I was on all that bulking, eating and eating and eating. Jenny was eating with me. We got fat as fuck.
Well, that's what I mean.
Getting
it's like
fuck.
See, the thing about it is that, and it runs in my family too. Unfortunately, I didn't get like my dad's side of the family. Like all the women were like pretty skinny, and like they just ate and just didn't gain any weight. Unfortunately, I got my mom's side of the family. I got their metabolism. Really, the only way I can lose any weight is by like sticking to 1,000 calories a day, which is
ridiculous.
Less than you're supposed to have, but. I can't eat any more than that. Otherwise, I will just be 300 pounds. So I really have to be careful.
I respond quickly to lifting and working out. I think you have to be that way in order to survive the army too. I think you're just kind of selected going through all that hardcore infantry basic training and stuff. People who don't recover quickly they get weaker.
Yeah.
So they don't make it through basic. I think a lot of it, but I'll gain fat too. But I lose it fast also.
Well, yeah. Well, you're a guy.
Yeah.
It's like for some reason, women in general, like their bodies just are like, no, we need the fat. Just keep it. So you know.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go into cutting phase.
That's what we've been trying to do. Like I said, we're still gonna do Thanksgiving, and we're gonna do like.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm gonna be bad. I'm gonna be bad.
Well, yeah, but
I'm gonna work out though.
That's just like one day, and we could like exercise extra.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's only going to be 2 of us, and we got, like... Because, man, we went to Winn-Dixie. If you live in the South, it's like Winn-Dixie's big grocery store chain. I know they don't have those in other parts of the country. But they had turkeys on sale. What were they? 49 cents a pound.
Yeah, we got 2 turkeys.
49 cents a pound.
I got 40 pounds of turkey.
So we got 2 20-pound
2 big 20-pound turkeys.
We're not going to eat them both at once.
I got it for $20.
I know.
How you gonna pass on a $10?
That's what I mean. So cheap. Well, they only let you buy 2 at once.
Yeah, so I gotta go back there and get some more.
Well, we can go back and get another one. Yeah. Well, I mean, I love turkey. We did the same thing last year because they were so cheap. It's like we bought 2 or 3 of them, and then we had one for Thanksgiving, and then we had one for Christmas too, I think, and then we had one like later in the year.
Yeah, I got that big ass pot. I got that big ass.
You're
pot.
thinking about deep frying it?
Yeah, and I got that fucking charcoal grill, and I can put it up there.
I don't know, man.
I deep fry. I'll make a turducken, put a turkey inside of a duck, inside of a chicken, inside of a turkey.
Do people in other parts of the world have turducken, or is that just an American thing?
That's a fucking white trash thing.
That seems like a very American invention.
Stuffing a turkey with more birds.
Yeah, like it's like
deep frying that shit.
Yeah, it's like a foul Ouroboros or something. Yeah. It's just kind of
believe me, people. If you guys have never heard of it, I don't know. Maybe there's somewhere in Europe or in Mongolia and weird places like that where they don't deep fry turkey. Deep frying a turkey is fucking outstanding because it doesn't lose as much moisture.
Yeah,
it gets sealed in.
I feel like it kind of got to be like that. Got to be like a really big thing, like the last maybe 10, 20 years.
Yeah, and
it's a big trend.
And the skin gets crisp and it seals it all in there. It's fantastic.
I mean, I like them roasted.
I don't think you could do it with Thanksgiving stuffing in there. Maybe somebody's figured out a way.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I think the oil might penetrate the stuffing, although maybe not, because you can deep fry hush puppies. You can deep fry it. It might just be like having a hush puppy inside there.
I don't know.
I ought to look it up. There's some kind of recipe for that somewhere.
I don't know. Maybe we could do that later. I think I'd rather have a roasted one for Thanksgiving, because that's just the regular shit.
It's Turkey Day, so we're talking about turkey.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. We're talking about like kind of food history.
It's a white meat. It's very lean. It's high in protein and low in carbs, low in calorie. It's a perfect meat. Go down there and just eat chicken breast and wings and
turkey.
Not wings, but legs. Turkey wings aren't that good to me. They're all right.
Honestly, I'm a dark meat.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the white meat too. I'll eat turkey with whatever way, but I like dark meat the best. I like the dark meat the best.
And then
chicken too. I like thighs and
cornbread stuffing.
Yeah, we're kind of like I said. I think it's just going to be the two of us, right, and the kitties.
We'll eat off that shit for fucking weeks.
Yeah, we probably will. But yeah, we still got enough pumpkin left to make a couple pumpkin pies. We're gonna make fucking cornbread stuffing, real mashed potatoes.
Yeah, I'll make some real mashed potatoes and whip them.
Because I mean, we don't go all out like that.
No. I'm not going to do the cream style corn. I'm not going to do the cream corn, the Brazilian cream corn.
It's good, but it just seems like
it's too many calories.
It's so much, man.
I might, you know what? I might go down there and get. I know you hate it, but make that green bean casserole.
Yeah, see, I don't.
You don't like it?
I don't like green bean casserole. I mean, you do kind of have to make one because it's like traditional, I guess.
Yeah, and you got to use canned stuff.
Yeah,
use the canned green beans.
It's traditional from the 50s.
Yeah, canned green beans.
I think it was invented by Campbell's Soup in like 1955 or something.
Yeah, any of you aliens...
To use up any like cream of mushroom soup or whatever the fuck you put in it.
Any of you alien beings from foreign cultures and shit.
Alien beings.
Yeah, that don't have...
From Mars or whatever.
That don't have a high culture like we do here in the United States. And don't understand the beauty of Campbell's cream of mushroom soup out of the can, poured into a bunch of canned green beans with some of those canned... What do you call it? Crunchy, fake onion rings on the top of it.
Like those French's,
the French
crunchy onions or whatever. I think that's the name of
That's
the
some fucking white trash shit. But boy, that is good though. Bake it down in that.
Yeah.
You can't beat it.
Oh, Pookie's messing with the camera again.
Leave that camera tripod alone. This ain't War of the Worlds. Leave the tripods alone.
She's mad because we brought her inside.
Yeah, and she's like, she's asking me to take her back outside.
But I don't like her running around outside while we're not here watching.
Yeah, I might have to go do that.
Yeah.
Just to spite you.
I'm not. I don't feel spited. Is that a word?
No, that's like something you would tell me not to do. No, don't do that.
Well, you can do it if you want. It's just keep in mind that you're going to be the one eating the entire thing.
I'll eat it.
Oh, I know you will.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I'll
go down to Winn-Dixie and get that shit.
As far as like...
Or Piggly Wiggly.
We don't have a Piggly Wiggly anymore.
I
think we had one in Daytona when I was growing up, but it's gone
wish
now.
I could buy it from Piggly Wiggly. That would make it even more southern.
Who the fuck's idea was it to call a grocery store Piggly
Some
Wiggly?
dude back in the 50s that's dead now. He thought it was a good idea at the time, you know. But them on them Piggly Wiggly. I'm going to call them pigs. You know, them pigs that wiggle. The Piggly Wiggly.
I'll give them that. They do wiggle sometimes.
Yeah. Little piglets.
I don't know how to get it. I don't even know if Piggly Wiggly is still in business, is it?
Yeah. Mississippi, I saw one.
Oh, you did? Just recently?
Yeah.
That was like a year.
But I think it's like a
year.
minor grocery store now.
Yeah, kind of like maybe it's like Goodings.
It didn't become like or like Rose's.
Yeah.
Remember Rose's department store? It's probably gone now.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to look that up now because I'm like really curious. If anybody knows out there, if you have a Piggly Wiggly buddy, like let me know.
Yeah.
Because you know.
They were like a Winn-Dixie. They were right alongside Winn-Dixie in Mississippi.
It's pretty much just here. It's Winn-Dixie. It's Publix. And, like Whole Foods and shit like that. We used to have Food Lion, but I think that might have gone out of business or is going out of business. Because there was one of those, because where I used to live in Daytona a few years ago, we had like a Winn-Dixie, and then like right across the street there was a Food Lion.
You get me excited about this Thanksgiving thing.
I'm excited about it.
I'm thinking about
well, especially because we've been like kind of starving ourselves for the last couple days.
Yeah. I'm gonna make real cranberry sauce. I make it out of whole cranberries.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna make 2 gravies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna make 2 different gravies. One of them's gonna have giblets in it.
You're putting the giblets in.
The other one's gonna be the stuff out of the stock pot.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
The onions and the celery out of the stock pot inside the stock that all the turkey necks and the gizzard and the fucking heart was all cooked in.
Yeah.
I'll just take the meat out of there and just blend it with that dripping.
Yeah, that'll be good.
And the onion in there, because I'll have a whole onion in there, and then the celery in there, and it'll blend into like a green gravy, and I'll gravyfy it. Yeah.
He says he's gonna gravyfy it.
And then all the meat, I'm gonna put that in the turkey gravy.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm gonna use the liver though.
No,
that liver gets.
I don't like
strong.
the liver. I don't mind the giblets, but the liver's pretty.
The liver gets too strong.
Yeah, it's too. Because I think did you put the
liver
in the last year, the year before, and it was like you could really taste it.
Yeah, I put the whole liver in there. I probably should have put like maybe 1/3 of that liver in there. Like just to have a slight flavor of it, but it was strong. Although some people would have really liked that. Some people who are into that liver.
Yeah, liver is a very acquired taste because it's a very, very strong flavor.
Yeah. Those weird limeys and redcoats and shit that eat all that fucking
limeys and redcoats.
Yeah, they would love that shit because they like the stuff that comes out the inside of animals.
They like all the organ meats and stuff.
Like the stuff that we throw away. They like that shit. They throw all that shit away in Mississippi. The English are eating it. Make a sausage out of it.
Well, hey, it's like,
the guts.
Don't waste it.
Guts and internal organs. I'm fucking with these people. I like them. I like some of it.
You eat chicken hearts. Come on.
I love chicken hearts. I can eat 1,000 chicken hearts.
He loves chicken hearts.
Yeah, I can eat whole bowls of them.
Because that's in Brazil, right?
Yeah, in
that's
Brazil,
like a big thing in Brazil.
Brazil, they have a barbecue thing called churrascaria, and in a churrascaria, they'll have guys dressed as gauchos running around with damn swords with meat on the swords. Boy, these vegetarians and vegans like old Sophie, she'd get pissed. It's just
thrusting meat.
Yeah,
in your
it's
face
just all meat.
time.
It's just all meat. And they got the swords with cooked meat on there, and like one guy's running around with nothing but just lines and lines and dozens of damn chicken hearts on a sword. And I was like, yeah, bring them on. And they're salted, and you can bring them on. And I have like a whole. And they're looking at me like I'm crazy. Like, how are you going to eat all the real good shit? Because they don't consider that the good shit.
Yeah.
The good shit is, of course, the beef and hump of the Brahma bull. They got that in there. And all kinds of cool shit, man. Awesome fucking pork. Yeah. I mean, Brazilian meat was better than American meat by far. At least when I was there.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
I feel like something needs to be named sword full of chicken hearts.
I had some of that Argentine beef, too, from the Pampas and all that. And I thought the Brazilian stuff was better.
Huh.
Yeah. And, that was world-renowned meat.
Yeah, everybody talks about that.
But
grass-fed, this and that.
Yeah, but the Brazilian stuff...
Because here they feed them corn,
Yeah, well, they're grass-fed in Brazil, too. I believe they were. They just came off of farms, The cowboys would chase them around in big herds, kind of like they did here a long time ago.
Yeah.
Well, they do that still in certain places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, it's whatever. But
Shit's good, man.
Yeah, we are looking forward to Thanksgiving.
Looking forward to Thanksgiving. Okay, so let's go ahead and do these shout-outs before we get fat.
well, hopefully, if we got fat just from talking about food, then we'd really be in trouble.
Just from talking about it. That was a 7,000-calorie discussion.
I might talk a little bit more about it later because I wanted to talk about what they actually ate at the quote unquote first Thanksgiving. But I
probably wasn't any good.
I kind of want to get into that a little bit because what people think of as the first Thanksgiving, there's a lot of like
I think I
misconceptions
did hear
about that.
I think I heard that they did have those pies, pumpkin pie.
I don't think that they did, not at the first one.
Okay.
I don't think they had any desserty stuff.
Okay.
They did have pumpkins and squash and things like that, but I think they had them like in a different.
It's my understanding that
application.
pumpkin was available. They did eat.
Yeah, they did.
The Indians on the East Coast. They were deep into that.
Yeah, they grew them.
They were
Yeah,
showing
they
them
grew pumpkins and squash and
evidently
beans and all that stuff.
pecans and things like pecan pie and pecans stuffed inside of animals like birds. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like stuffing that was made out of things like fruit and nuts together. Which they did that in England back in those days. They did weird mincemeats type stuff. Yeah. They did that there for a long time. They were making that here. But go ahead and tell.
And I think some people still do that here, like with the stuffing or dressing, if you want to call it that. 'Cause some people call it stuffing when it's in the bird and dressing when it's out. Make it separate.
Yeah.
But some people put like cranberries and shit like that in there. That's not that weird. I mean,
Yeah.
All right, so...
I don't know if cranberries were in those colonies or around there. They're from that area later. I don't know during that time.
Yeah, they might have put
1500s.
They might have put some other shit in there
Right.
too. Those like fruit or nuts or something.
Late 1400s.
Yeah. But all right, so we just had a couple of shout outs that I wanted to do. Obviously, I think I mentioned this pretty much every week, but Faceless Villain 3 and my horror fiction book, Associated Villainies, is out in audio format. So if you want to check that out, you can. Like I said, I'm still working on the audio for my other fiction compilation, Hopeful Monsters. I got a bunch of the stories read. I haven't edited them yet, but I gotta just keep doing that. Also, I mentioned this last time, but I'm thinking about in a few months, probably in the start of the new year, I'm gonna do like a new little show where it's just like me reading scary stories. You know what I mean? But some like public domain stories or like creepy stories from Reddit or whatever, or some of my own fiction or whatever. And I'm just going to have them, they're each going to be like about an hour long, and, it'll just be several, like 3 or 4 stories like in one thing, and it'll just have like creepy little visuals and stuff like that. Because I know sometimes like people just like to listen to like creepy stories and people reading them. So I have 2 episodes done, and I'm just going to like stock some up, and then I might start putting them up like in the new year maybe. Like maybe once a week or once every couple weeks, some shit like that. Also, big shout out to Tiffany, who sent us a PayPal donation this week.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
So thank you very much. I probably told you, but you probably forgot.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the real history of Thanksgiving. Because I feel like, and I don't know, I remember when I was a kid in the 70s and early 80s, they were still kind of teaching... the sort of mythical first Thanksgiving story about the Pilgrims, and they had kind of a shitty day, and then like the Native Americans like helped them, and like they all kind of got together like for a big party, and it was like all like sunshine and rainbows and shit like that, which isn't exactly how shit happened.
Yeah, let me say something about this.
Yeah.
Most of American history that was taught to kids, especially our age, had been taught for a long time.
Yeah.
In that way. There's a lot of stuff that was mythical, like George Washington cutting down cherry trees.
Yeah.
And just things like Paul Bunyan would be mixed in with him, and that's a fictional character.
And that's a fictional, because he's a giant, obviously, so he's not real.
But that was a real common thing to do in a civilization.
Yeah.
What?
Oh my goodness.
I got other things I got to do. But hold on. That's a real common thing to do for a civilization, to give kind of like mythical histories. That went all the way back to Rome. And that's because it was easy to teach kids values and to teach them to be, supportive of their country, and to at least have a basic idea of how the country started and what it was all about. It was like a religion. It was a pseudo-religion.
Yeah.
And it was like a national religion. And America does have a national religion. It still kind of does.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't mean that it's false in essence, but it's a bunch of memes.
Yeah.
That's basically as good way to put it.
Well, that's kind of what I always found interesting about it, is that even if it's not true...
It's kind of true.
Not only that, but it's also, it says a lot about, like, the national character and stuff like that, like, why these particular types of stories take hold, like, over maybe what really happened.
Now, let me really blow some of these people's minds. I don't know if you've been with the show for a long time, but, my connection with Dr. Robert M. Price, Jesus myth, Jesus scholar and Jesus mythicist. Actually, the religions are like this too.
Yeah.
All of them, not just nations. A lot of those religions are founded in memes that didn't really happen.
Yeah.
But they meant something for the character of the religion, the people that were founded those religions and wanted to continue them. Just because it's in those religious books doesn't mean it actually happened.
Well,
almost in no case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I always found interesting about American history is that a lot of our kind of memes, like you said, or our legends and stuff like that, are more like tall tales. Yeah. They're not quite as fantastical as maybe some of the ones from other parts of the world. They do tend to be like more realistic, but just exaggerated. Like you said, like look at Paul Bunyan, who was like a lumberjack, but he was a giant.
Yeah.
But he was like based on a real person, but it was just like exaggerated. Yeah. And the same thing, like our national myths, kind of like John Henry and shit like their Pecos Bill and stuff like that.
All that stuff was to kind of exemplify and kind of teach young people and kids about the expansion westward of Western civilization in the form of the United States. Really, at that era, the United States it was just Western civilization. It was very much kind of like I guess you could say, a mutant version of England.
Yeah.
But there was, in certain areas, it was also Spain and France.
Yeah.
Because there was the Louisiana Purchase. So but the people telling the stories are basically English people separated by a couple generations.
Yeah. But the thing about, like, the kind of myth around Thanksgiving is kind of like, and maybe a lot of people know this now, and like I said, I'm not really sure how they teach it to, like, particularly elementary school kids nowadays, but because it's like, I remember, learning about, the Pilgrims and Squanto, and, him teaching them, and like, suddenly everyone's like getting along, and then they had the first Thanksgiving, and it was like super awesome, and then they just like kind of had it every year after that, like, as a celebration of their alliance, I guess, but that's really not at all how it happened. You know what I mean? So it's just interesting how that gets taught. And like I said, if anybody out there has like kids that are that age, like elementary school age, and they're learning about Thanksgiving or whatever, it's like, I'm kind of curious as to like if they teach something like a version that's like closer to the truth now, or if they still do the thing like you remember there's that it's not as popular or famous as the Christmas one, but the Charlie Brown, like the Peanuts special, they did a Thanksgiving one too. Yeah. And it's like, I feel like, I can't remember exactly what happened in it, because like I said, they don't show it as much as the Christmas one. But didn't they try to like make a Thanksgiving? I think Peppermint Patty like tried to make a Thanksgiving dinner and she fucked it up, like she burned it or some shit like that. And then Snoopy and Woodstock had to like save the day, and then for Thanksgiving they ended up having like toast and jelly beans and popcorn, I think it was, or something like that, because they messed up the food.
There's also kind of a modern misconception, or they would kind of miscast what Thanksgiving was also, that it was just basically they try to kind of soil it by saying, well, this is just white people giving thanks for giving to a new world. No, actually, the meaning was it was Indians and white people giving thanks that they were in a new world, living in peace, because that's part of that.
For a short time, anyway.
Story.
Sure, yeah.
Well, okay, that's another thing too. In general, alliances between groups of whites and groups of Indians lasted a long time.
Yeah.
But usually what happened was a couple generations would pass and the agreements that they were made by ancestors no longer applied.
Yeah.
Or you had a lot of situations where whites and their Indian allies would go to war against other whites or other Indians.
Yeah.
It's not simple.
Well, like I said, it was never, and we kind of talked about this on some of our other shows, where it's like wherever you talk about American history and they're always talking about like, the colonists and the Native Americans, it's like you can't really just say, oh, Native Americans, because like a lot of those tribes were like at war with each other.
Yeah, they were nations.
Some of them allied with the colonists, like against another tribe because they had been fighting them for a long time, and it's like, they tried to like have all these strategic kind of thing. So it's always kind of like way more complicated than...
Yeah. It's the Hollywood always wants to present the Native American nations as some kind of like hapless victims. No, these were able-bodied players and warriors. They were every bit as warlike as European nations. They went to war with each other just like European nations went to war with each other.
Yeah.
They had a lot of divisions between them, and they weren't all the same ethnic group. That's another thing.
Well, yeah, this was a lot of different...
This was a long time ago, and all those Indians, some of those Indians, they were cousins to each other, but some of them weren't really directly related to each other.
Yeah.
You know, because the immigration from both Asia and Europe had happened in successive waves over tens of thousands of years. They had different racial makeups.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I said, it's always like a lot more complicated.
Yeah, it's very complicated.
Than anything. So like I said, anything... that kind of simplifies the Thanksgiving story, saying like, oh, it was like this big thing that signified, but that's cool. It's like, it's nice to like signify, harmony between groups that were fighting and like, give thanks for what you have and stuff like that. But, it's always like a lot more complicated than it sounds, and which makes it more interesting, I think.
Yeah, and the Thanksgiving story was true in its essence.
In a way, like parts of it are true, sure.
Because the colonists, the descendants of the colonists were the New English. The descendants of those Indians were, kind of like the Mohicans in the Northwest Indian, the Northeast Indian nations. And they interbred a lot. They were at peace mostly.
Yeah.
A lot of the other warfare stuff that was actually happening out in what they called, what would now be Texas. And, they did have some stuff going on in the South. But it wasn't really as violent in the Northeast.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because it was cold.
So yeah, everyone was like, fuck, we're not going outside to do this shit today.
Well, the winter. And, and it was they were agricultural-based societies. You needed a lot of stability and competition or everyone would die.
Yeah.
Excuse me. You had to have stability and not competition, but cooperation,
Yeah.
or you couldn't conduct agriculture and they'd die.
Yeah.
I mean, we went back to the... I think we talked about it before in the Salem witch trials.
Yeah.
During the time of the witch trials, most of the people in Salem were Native American.
Yeah.
Even though they had English names, or at least part Native American.
Yeah, like I said, there was a lot of interbreeding between the populations.
There weren't enough women.
Well, yeah.
So, most guys married Indian women.
And we'll kind of get into that because I was going to talk a little bit about the Mayflower and stuff like that, like when they first came over and stuff. But what we know of as Thanksgiving, like the national holiday, it wasn't even proclaimed a national holiday until 1836. Abe Lincoln did that. And and that was like in the middle of the Civil War. Now, interestingly, and I didn't know this, but there's this woman named Sarah Josepha Hale. She was a magazine editor and a writer. And apparently she had got a bee in her bonnet about making Thanksgiving like a national holiday on a specific day because it had been celebrated like sporadically, but it wasn't like official. Yeah. So she really, really wanted that to happen because she thought, it would unify the country. And it's like, it has like kind of a religious significance. At least it started out. I think a lot of people don't really see it like that.
It sounds a lot like Christmas.
Yeah.
Christmas wasn't really
they didn't really celebrate that until the 1800s.
Yeah, thanks to the Coca-Cola company.
Yeah, they kind of had a big had a big part of that.
A lot of people don't
know the imagery of it.
The imagery of
the
it. The
secular imagery, sure.
The secular imagery and like packaging and the marketing of Christmas as we know it was very much a thing of the Coca-Cola company.
Yeah.
Santa Claus and the way he looked and just I think the government was behind it though too. I think they wanted that holiday.
Yeah.
But, I'd have to go look back into it. I know the imagery is from Coca-Cola.
A lot of it is, yeah.
Yeah, in the late 1800s.
And like I said, even before that, you had like, Puritans and stuff like that. Like back in the day, they didn't celebrate Christmas because they thought it was blasphemous or something like that somehow. But yeah, so there had been, this woman, Sarah Josepha Hale, who actually, incidentally, she also wrote Mary Had a Little Lamb. So, she had been on like a 36-year campaign to get Thanksgiving designated as a national holiday. I mean, she wrote letters and editorials and she just like all the time. They call her the mother of Thanksgiving, actually. So finally she just, worked tirelessly for 36 fucking years on this thing. This is obviously very important to her. And, finally in 1836, Abe Lincoln declared it the national holiday.
1836.
1836, that's when it was. Like I said, right in the middle of the Civil War. So let's talk a little bit about the stuff about the quote-unquote pilgrims. They were not called that at the time. They weren't called that until later. Who came over on the Mayflower and how all of that shit went down and then how that led up to, like, the Thanksgiving thing. So the story goes, and like we were taught in school, here come the Pilgrims on the Mayflower. They land on Plymouth Rock. They set up their little settlement or whatever. Now, something that I didn't actually know until much later was that they actually were not supposed to land in Massachusetts. That wasn't where they were heading. They were actually going to Virginia, but they fucked up. So when they landed at Plymouth Rock, that was like the wrong place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I don't think they were the first ones. There was other ones. There were other colonies that landed. I think
Jamestown was before that, but that was kind of like the first permanent settlement.
Right.
I think that was only a couple years before.
A couple years for.
Yeah. So the Europeans, they first go to New England in like the mid 1610s, right around then. But when they first got there, like the whole coast was just like, it was all Native American settlements. It was so crowded that there was like no room for anyone else to settle in there because they had taken up like all the good land, obviously, because there were a lot of them living there. But, and we probably mentioned this before, like when the Europeans like came back again, most of those Native Americans were dead because there had been some kind of like disease, like a plague or something like that had spread. They still really don't know what caused that.
They're pretty sure it was the arrival of the Spanish in Mexico.
Spanish
They may have done it. Well, they were carrying European diseases.
And they didn't have any immunity.
No defense, yeah.
Yeah. So by the time the Europeans came back, it's like there was just like all these like empty settlements because most of the Native Americans that they had seen previously, like on their previous journey, were dead. This was only like a 3-year period.
I remember reading one thing where there was somebody during this era sailing up the coastline, and at night you could actually see like a red glow, they said, through the heavens, lighting up all the trees.
Yeah.
From all the campfires. Mm-hmm. It was like a cityscape at night.
And
that's how many Indians there were.
Yeah.
And they actually did a study trying to figure out how much wood they were burning. And evidently they were doing a hell of ecological destruction
I guess so.
out there because they would cut down a certain amount of wood every day.
Well, yeah,
you had
to
move around. Yeah. And they weren't planting, they were just cutting. But before that big plague had hit, and I think that's when that guy saw the tree line.
Yeah.
Because I think they mentioned that later on, a few years later, that it was gone.
Yeah, because like I said, this was kind of like, I think it was around 1614, 1615, when they first, like I said, there was no place for them to settle because it was just, it was packed. They said there was just settlements everywhere.
Yeah, before that plague, they said it was just like packed. And they said the forest looked manicured and and it was like it was laid out for display. I bet you they were running through people's forests or gardens.
Yeah.
And what do you call them? Fields and crops.
Yeah.
Because they were in that area agricultural.
Yeah.
They were planting stuff.
Yeah.
So just like that one thing that we read in that, what was it, Cracked magazine?
Yeah.
They weren't uncivilized savages.
No, of course not.
They had to have technology. They were quite advanced.
Well, like I said, they were the ones that had to like teach the Pilgrims, as we'll get to later on. They taught them like how to fish, and they taught them how to like grow the crops that were native to there because the Pilgrims didn't have any idea what they were doing.
There's a lot of mysterious stuff in the United States. Tunnels that can't be explained, things that looked kind of like old weathered pyramids, and they were building down here. Mm-hmm. And when that plague got a lot of them, a lot of stuff was lost.
Oh yeah,
because they built stuff. We just don't know. We just don't know what it means or who did it.
Yeah, there's still so much shit there, like all those weird mounds and all that other kind of stuff that they're not real sure like where the shit came from. It's like there's so much of it that still has to be.
Yeah, and stuff that looks man-made and it's big.
Yeah,
they're not sure who did it.
Yep.
But there was stuff going on back then.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so so within 3 years, like a lot of the Native American tribes have been wiped out by, some plague or disease or whatever that they still haven't identified. So when the settlers came back again, like in the late 1610s, they basically found like all these settlements that were just like eerily empty. They were like kind of like ghost town type of thing. So they kind of just set about to raiding the place, raiding the corpses for clothes and stuff, because they figured, hey, everyone's dead, no one's using it, I guess. They were practical, I guess. So September 1620, there was a merchant ship called the Mayflower, and it set sail from Plymouth, England. Now, this was normally not a passenger ship. This was normally a cargo ship. It usually carried dry goods and wine. there were 102 passengers on here, and 40 of them were Protestant separatists. They called themselves saints. These are the people that would later be called the Pilgrims. So what they wanted to do was establish a church in the New World where they could, kind of worship the way they wanted to, because they were trying to kind of get away from the church in England.
You're getting too secular and too worldly over there.
It wasn't even so much that. They thought that they were, well, it's more, we'll kind of get into that.
I think it had to do with the Protestant Catholic conflicts and stuff.
Yeah. See, because what ended up happening was, so these people, prior to this, in 1608, a bunch of these Protestants had moved to Holland because they thought they would be able to have more religious freedom there.
Yeah.
Which they did. However, they didn't like Holland because it was too, quote unquote, cosmopolitan for them, a little too secular, and they didn't like it. They thought it was too freewheeling and laid back, and they just couldn't hang.
They had to have that uptight lifestyle.
They just had to.
Yeah.
So they couldn't deal with the people in Holland.
Course.
So even though Holland were all like, even though people in Holland were probably just all laying around smoking pot going, chill out, man, what the fuck? But, so the English people were just like, no, we can't have that. Their little collars were too stiff. So they're pretty much, see, they had a thing where they didn't want to pledge allegiance to the Church of England because they saw the Church of England as just as corrupt as the Catholic Church. You know what I mean? So they didn't like either one of them. And they just wanted to part ways and start their own shit. You know what I mean?
Sounds just like American Protestants today.
Yeah.
That same thing.
Similar.
Yeah.
Now,
separation of church and state, they worry about all that.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you're talking about pilgrims, like I said, and they weren't called that at the time, these are not Puritans. That was a different thing. But so these people who, like I said, they called themselves saints who were essentially separatists. So after they stayed in Holland for a while, and then they were just like, fuck this, it's just too worldly, and they just couldn't deal with it, even though they were allowed to worship as they wanted, because I guess the Dutch didn't really care. But one thing that they couldn't do when they were in Holland is, I guess, that because they were immigrants, the Dutch wouldn't let them into the trade guilds and stuff. So the jobs that they had, they couldn't get any really good jobs. They had to kind of do kind of crappy ones, and they sort of weren't happy about that. Also, some of their kids were leaving the sect because they liked the Dutch lifestyle, because like I said, they were a little more worldly and they seemed more fun and chill, I guess. So the kids were starting to leave. So the saints were kind of we can't really have that, so we have to get the fuck out of here.
Well, they were probably realistic, not idealistic. They go, man, we're going to go to the New World and get our asses fucking killed. Probably what they're thinking. We'd rather stay here, man.
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
they're volunteering for hardship. To set these colonies
I'm
up.
not entirely sure. These religious separatists.
I think you kind of got to either be dumb or kind of nuts to do
or
this.
A combination of the two.
Yeah, or just because I don't think the rewards would outweigh the risks.
Well, I'm not really entirely sure how. I mean, obviously they were not prepared for going to the New World. I don't think they knew what it was going to be like. They
were guessing.
I mean, I don't think that they imagined the hardship that they would encounter when they got there. I'm not sure what exactly they were thinking, but it's
they were thinking they were going to.
Do they think they were just going to land on U.S. shores and it's go to the Starbucks and it's everyone would give them a parade and shit?
What did they thought they were going to land in a paradise. It was going to be kind of like something out of the book of Genesis,
like Eden or something.
Eden.
Maybe that's what it was.
And it would be very much like a garden or a field out in England somewhere between two towns.
Yeah.
And you're just going to picnic and camp.
And maybe that's what they thought.
You know what I mean? Raise some sheep or something, and maybe plant a few things and everything will be fine. I think that's what they're thinking. I
mean, the thing about it though is that some Europeans had been to the New World, so they knew what it was like. So you'd think that some information about that might have filtered back to them.
I think a lot of them went there and never came back.
Yeah, maybe.
Because some of those colonies just vanished.
That's true. Yeah,
so I think
the Lost Roanoke kind of thing. We did a show about that last Thanksgiving.
You couldn't just go on the internet and
True.
and see what happened.
And Google.
I think it's just it's just
How to survive in the new world.
Not only that, what happened to this colony and when did they leave?
Yeah.
Call them. See how they're doing. So what?
I got his number right here.
Yeah. So I think it was rumor and tales.
Yeah.
And in that era, with those type of people with that type of education and limited amount of information, and your imagination might be able to run wild with you, especially if you're religious.
Yeah.
So you're going to look at this in biblical terms.
They probably thought God will provide.
God will provide. It'll be just like Eden,
Because they thought they were right in their religious views. So they thought, well, God will give us a place that we can go. Maybe that's what they were thinking.
And if we get attacked by a bunch of natives, it'll be just like David versus Goliath, and we'll triumph. We'll prevail just by our goodness,
I imagine that probably.
I think that had a lot. That was that kind of thinking. Then they get there and they realize that
they're like, "Oh shit, this sucks."
First of all, they realize that they're not prepared, that they're weaker than Indians. Clearly. That's another thing that Indians didn't. Indians, you had to pretty much run with the Indians to impress them, and they weren't scared of guns.
Yeah,
there's a lot of fucking things that modern day people think they're myths. Indians had no respect for guns because guns sucked in those days.
Well, yeah,
they were matchlocks.
Yeah,
which were fucking useless. There was like a pop gun. And then, the match would go out and powder would get wet, and it didn't really even make a good club.
Yeah, that's true.
And the reloading time was a lot.
Yeah.
And they weren't accurate at all. They were smoothbore. You got off one round, you usually missed, and the guys ran up on you with something like a war club and just beat you to death. That's usually how that shit went down.
Yeah, I could see that.
It was a European weapon. Used for skirmishing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was just not something that worked in the New World.
Well, and another thing, too, is that when the Europeans came here, they had no familiarity with the terrain or the climate or anything like that. So in that way, the Native Americans had a huge advantage.
Yeah.
Like, not only were their weapons, like they had bows and arrows and
stuff
like that, they had better weapons,
they
more
had
accurate weapons.
Better clothes.
But they were more suited to the terrain. They'd lived there for thousands of years, so they were, like, used to it.
Yep. I mean, firearms didn't become good weapons until the 1800s.
Yeah.
With the advent of the metallic cartridge. Yeah, you could say that some of the muzzle loading rifles and cap lock type pistols, from the before that they were okay.
Yeah.
The very late versions of muzzle loading black powder stuff, but really, it wasn't until the metallic case came out, that weapons were any good.
Yeah. And
that was about mid 1800s. Before that time, you were better off with a really good bow, or a sword, or something like that.
Yeah, honestly.
But just Europeans had the habit of carrying them.
Yeah.
And they're like you did looking at the Civil War, they were using kind of Napoleonic fighting tactics. Let's line up. Yeah. Everybody line up. Load up your guns. Let's shoot at that big old crowd over there.
Yeah.
Don't you lay down on the ground.
Which seems less
stupid.
than ideal.
Yes, stupid.
Less than ideal.
Well, it was a thing of honor. You couldn't.
I get that.
If you got down on the ground to dodge a volley
that's
around,
cheating.
That was cheating. And
don't you get up and let me shoot at you.
Stand up. Stand up in that volley. Face him like a man. Crazy shit, man.
It is crazy.
Yeah, and then fuck camouflage. I'm wearing red.
Yeah, I want everybody to see my ass.
Yeah.
I want to be a big, bright target.
Yeah.
I always wondered.
Well, they were inaccurate, so they were inaccurate weapons.
So probably you wouldn't.
So you had to aim at a damn. You could hit a barn at 100 yards, and that's what they would do. To make it fair, you had to group up in basically two rock concerts, kind of shooting at each other. You're hitting in there somewhere. And then you got generals yelling, and then you guys got shot up. Okay, I'm going back home.
Every now and then you got lucky and killed somebody. But yeah, so...
Well, they shot each other to pieces.
Yeah.
It was just... That was the way those generals were trained. But Indians didn't fight that way. They fought sensibly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, like I said...
Guerrilla tactics.
That's why a lot of their early battles and stuff like that, they won those, because...
Yeah. Indians mostly won battles.
They did, yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, we'll get into that a little bit when we talk about the Pequot War, but, yeah. So these separatists, they're in Holland. They're not getting the good jobs. Their kids are taking off, and like, yeah, we just, we're gonna hang with the Dutch because they seem like chill and everything. So they said, okay, well, we're gonna go to the New World. Just like I said, not even expecting. I don't even think. So they go back to London to get their shit together before they go to the New World. So there's this guy, and he's like a merchant who has like a shit ton of money, and he says, okay, well, I'll give you an advance to go, to go over there. So they get permission from the Virginia Company to establish a plantation on the east coast of Virginia. It was supposed to be between 38 and 41 degrees north latitude, which is about between Chesapeake Bay and the mouth of the Hudson River. That's where they were supposed to be going. However, as history shows, that's not where they ended up. But that's where they were supposed to go, and that's where they had permission to go and permission to set up a settlement. Now, the King of England gave them permission to go. And said they could leave the Church of England as long as they, or the quote was, provided they carried themselves peaceably.
Yeah. As long as they were chilled out.
Yeah, you guys just chill out.
Yeah.
Now, so August of 1620, there's these 40 saints. Now, what a lot of people don't know, too, is that the quote-unquote pilgrims that came over on the Mayflower, they weren't all these religious separatists. Some of them were just, like, regular-ass people who were trying to get away from England for various reasons. Some of them because they had a lot of debt, or because they were poor and they didn't think that they could they weren't doing that well in England. They thought maybe I'll go over there and start over and shit like that. So there were other like motives for people. It wasn't all, religious freedom or whatever. Now, the other people that were on the ship who were kind of more secular were called strangers. That's what the saints called them. So they actually set sail from Southampton in two boats. The Mayflower and the Speedwell. However, they didn't get that far before the Speedwell sprung a leak, so they both had to turn around and go back, and then all the people on the Speedwell had to get on the Mayflower. Damn. Now, unfortunately, and like I said, this was a lot of people. It's a cargo ship. It wasn't really that big. It was 80 feet long and 24 feet wide. That's
crammed up.
Yeah, so they were kind of crammed into this boat. And the problem was because the Speedwell had sprung a leak and they had to go back, that delayed their trip to such an extent that by the time they started sailing the Atlantic Ocean, it was like the stormy season. So it was like the shitty time of year when no one wanted to sail because, like I said, they'd been running late. So it actually ended up taking more than 2 months.
Damn.
And they said the journey was just horrific. They said pretty much everybody was seasick like the entire time. One of the guys who was one of the quote unquote strangers got swept overboard, and shit like that. I love that, like, I think he was like the governor of the Plymouth colony later on, William Bradford, and he was the one where he wrote so much about the Plymouth colony later on that it's where like a lot of the stuff that we know about the Plymouth colony comes from his writings. He said the one guy that's got swept overboard, I love this fucking quote. This guy's such a dick. He says, "It was the just hand of God upon him."
Yeah, okay.
For the young sailor had been a proud and very profane young man.
Yeah.
So God punished him by sweeping him off the fucking boat.
He was proud and swearing, and God took him out.
I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
God's got some fucking tough ass laws.
I guess so. He's like, yeah, I don't like you, flick, and he just flicked him off the fucking deck and swept him into the ocean where he probably got eaten by sharks. But I'm like, I love that dude was just kind of like, good riddance.
Fuck yeah.
He sucked anyway. You know what I mean?
People were hardcore back then. I like that kind of thing. I'm just gonna start saying that kind of shit. I'm gonna bring that back into style.
You're gonna bring that back into style.
Yeah.
Where you just like don't
People
give a shit.
get fucked over. Yeah, fuck it.
Yeah, fuck him. I hated that dude.
God did it.
God did it. Yeah, that's what. Sorry about that.
Bad.
Sorry about the camera movement.
Yeah.
Pookie's over there rolling around by the camera. She's like, so with her little belly sticking out. So 66 days it took them to cross the ocean. Like I said, everyone's puking over the sides. It was horrible. They were all crammed in this boat. So they finally get there, and like I said, even though they were supposed to land like near Chesapeake Bay or the Hudson River, they actually ended up landing at what is now called Plymouth Rock. So they ended up in the wrong place. And not only that, but this was somewhere where they didn't have permission to be, because as I said, they had permission to go to this one place in Virginia. However, this is Massachusetts. So they're not really allowed to be here. So they decide, well, we came all this way and it sucked, so we're just going to stay. So, and there was, like I said, a lot of the Native American tribes had been wiped out by disease and stuff like that. So there wasn't a lot of, there were some settlements that had been abandoned. So they started kind of raiding it for supplies and raiding the graves and stuff for supplies. So they named the colony Plymouth. 41 of the saints and strangers then drafted a document that they called the Mayflower Compact. And this was supposedly, they're saying we're going to have the laws, and we're going to all abide by the laws and yada yada. It's just like making it official or whatever. They also swore their allegiance to the English king. Then, so, they get there. Now, the first winter they were there, like I said, they seemed to have... I don't know what they were expecting, but they really seemed to have no idea what the climate was going to be like. They didn't really have enough supplies. They didn't have enough food. So they spent like the first winter when they got there, they actually spent it on the boat. And a whole bunch of them died. Probably I think it was about half of them.
They thought it'd be warmer up in that boat, huh?
I guess. Almost all the women died. I think there was like 19 women, and I think all but 5 of them.
Yeah.
5 of them lived.
They didn't know what they were in for.
Through that winter. Yeah, I feel like they had no idea, like, what the fuck was going on.
They didn't even know how to make an igloo.
No. Like I said, they just came over here.
Yeah.
I don't know what they thought was going to happen. It's like, I just really don't.
Sounds crazy to make a house out of damn snow and ice that it'd be warm, but no, you could get very warm inside an igloo.
Well, yeah, why do you think,
to
like,
outside,
the Inuit do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably been better than that boat.
Yeah, well, I mean, they did stay in the boat, but a lot of them died anyway. It wasn't just from the cold. Some of them starved to death because, like I said, they didn't have enough supplies.
I'll bet you a lot of it had to do with being at close
Disease.
quarters.
Yeah.
And you see, you got to spread out.
Yeah.
Just shit like staph.
Yeah.
Can start spreading like crazy.
Well, yeah, and that might have been what it was because they were all just crammed. They'd been crammed together on this fucking boat, like all sick and everything for 2 months.
A lot of times they'll go, boils happened, and then, historians will come up, some kind of mysterious disease struck them down. A lot of that shit sounds like staph.
Yeah.
And staph can spread like crazy.
Oh, yeah. They still have problems with it now in hospitals and stuff.
Especially if you got people real close together, they're working hard to get cuts on them, and they're sneezing and wiping their nose and putting boogers on shit. And
putting boogers on shit.
Touching stuff and touching and leaving behind.
Wiping their ass with their hand and then smearing it on people's
touching
faces.
And scratching and touching things, and then you touch it, and that's how that shit spreads, man.
And I just don't think they had any fucking idea.
No, they didn't have any idea.
Like I said, they were just like picking their nose and just like
touching and scratching and scratch. Then
scratching their ass.
Yeah. And they go, can I wear those pants? You know what I mean? And just shit like that,
Those are nice.
Yeah, bitch was liable to share a motherfucker's pants back then. They didn't have any fucking sense.
They didn't got no washing machines.
Yeah, they didn't have any fucking sense, man. Can I wear your pants?
They had neither washing machines nor sense.
Yeah.
You're probably right about
that.
Yeah. I always wonder, too, if, like, the Native Americans thought that, too. They're like, look at those disgusting motherfuckers.
Yeah.
They're all fucking riddled with lice, and it's like they're all...
They said they were weak. They were weak and childlike, and they treated their women like children. And there's a lot of Indian stuff that I'd read. Yeah. They were totally like a fish out of water.
Well, yeah.
Basically, they were saying they were just nerdy. They were nerdy, real nerdy, restricted kind of people that had to do things a certain way. Indians were versatile. They're practical.
Well, yeah, and like I said, they've been living in this environment for thousands of years, and it's like they had kind of a thing set up. You know what I mean?
If you read shit written by white people all through that entire period, really through the entire period. It was nothing but just one long man crush on Indians. Yeah. That's all they wrote about. How great Indians were. That all their shit was better.
Well, yeah. I mean,
so
like I said...
I don't know where these some of these people today think there was some kind of weird racial hatred. Go back and go read what white people were writing about Indians. It was fucking admiration, almost all of it.
Well, yeah, because they were so... Like you said, they were so much...
too.
Bigger, stronger. Yeah. They had their shit together.
Yeah, they had better stuff.
They lived.
Europeans were admitting that they lived a better lifestyle. It was where they were clean country living, on the road, moving around. That they were better looking. Just everything that you could imagine. Just totally brown-nosing on these Indians. But I think they were telling the truth.
Yeah.
They said they were superior physical specimens.
Yeah.
And that's why so many white people joined Indian tribes. That's, you know, some of those tribes were damn near white.
Well, I would feel like if I got...
That was the place to be.
If I got dragged over here back then, you know, I think that's probably the first thing I would have done.
They had white people joining them and runaway slaves joining Indian tribes. It was just, you know...
Like I said, you can't
Indians didn't really... Indians evidently weren't too prejudiced. If they liked you, if they liked you, thought you were worth a shit, they'd let you join.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so... As I said, these first settlers that came over in the Mayflower, they spent the first winter on the ship. About half of them died from disease, malnutrition, various other things. In April of 1621, the Mayflower had to go back to England, so they kind of like, they said, well, colonists, you just have to stay here now. You have to like make the settlement. So they did. Now, it seems that probably if the Native Americans, if some of the Native Americans had not like stepped forward to help these poor helpless people, then probably all of them would have died, I think. You know what I mean? Because they had no fucking clue. They just came over here without anything. So here is a guy named Samoset. He was from the Pawtuxet tribe, and he approached them and could speak English. They were very surprised. Through him, he helped the colonists kind of form an alliance with the local tribe, the Wampanoag. And he actually ended up teaching them how to hunt all the local animals, how to grow corn, beans, squash, gather shellfish and fish and stuff like that, because apparently the colonists didn't even know how to do that, and all this other kind of stuff. Now, there is also the very famous Squanto, which was actually not his name. His name was Tisquantum. Squanto was actually just kind of like a nickname that somebody gave him, and for some reason, that's the one that stuck, even though Tisquantum is like a way more badass name. I don't know why people
Easier to remember Squanto, though.
That's true, yeah. So he also approached the Pilgrims and offered to help them. He was fluent in English, and that was because...
He'd been to England.
He had been, in about 1614, 1615, he had actually been captured along with many other Native Americans and taken back to England and sold as a slave. Yeah. He actually escaped at one point and came back to the New World, but then he got captured again, I think, and then they took him to Spain and sold him into slavery. But he escaped to England and then came back to the New World. So he... you know, so he was very familiar with like English traditions. Like I said, he was fluent in English. So he acted as the separatist translator, and also taught him how to plant corn and various other types of things.
I read some stuff about him though. He wasn't really a slave. They didn't capture him and turn him into a worker. What they did is they just took him around and showed him off.
They did that a lot with it, because I feel like they kind of did that to Pocahontas a little bit as well.
He was like a... They brought him to England and used him kind of like an attraction.
Yeah.
Or what would be a good way to put it? Like a museum piece.
Yeah.
Look what we got. Because he went and met the royal family, and he was free. He could walk around. He'd evidently had some kids while he was there, if I remember correctly, on one of those trips.
Yeah, I don't know.
And he wore British clothes and adapted to the culture and everything, could speak English. And then every time he'd go back home to the United States and meet the Indians, he tried to describe England to them, and they didn't believe him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said that they
thought he was tripping.
Thought he was tripping. Said that he met the king and the queen, and that and that they lived in stone houses, and he tried to describe to them what cities like, and they thought he was lying.
They were like, bullshit.
They're like,
Squanto.
bullshit. Yeah. They didn't believe
Tell
it.
us another one. Pull the other one.
And I think the second time, he kind of went back voluntarily.
Yeah.
I think, if I remember correctly, that's an oversimplified version of it. There's more to it than that.
Yeah, like I said, they don't know a lot about... They know that he was captured at least once, maybe twice.
I think he was captured. What they would do a lot of times, and that's probably how they got him, is they'd invite an Indian on the ship to show him the ship. You know what I mean? They were friends with him.
And then they'd be like, bye, we're sailing.
Yeah, and then they clamp the irons on him and fucking sail off.
That's not nice.
And then once they got out of view of the land, they'd take the irons off of him and say, you're with us now.
And he's like, oh.
And they'd be crying, and and they'd try to cheer him up, you know what I mean? But they didn't think anything of it. Let's take him to England.
That's
Weird
so
shit.
weird. That's so weird to me. It's like they didn't think that this was like a person that had like a family and people
I think they did.
and
They
shit
didn't
like
care.
that. I guess not.
They didn't care. They're like,
That's
no,
so weird.
We're gonna
get over it.
Yeah,
Come
get
on.
over it. It'll be all right. We did it because they're sailors.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, we did it. You know what I mean?
They're like, yeah, but
He'll
I'm
get
not
over
a
it.
sailor. I got Shanghai.
Yeah, they're like,
this shit.
Well, yeah, there's nothing Shanghai. These Shanghai white people, so they came back on them. You wake up, you're in Shanghai. How the fuck did I get here? Work, bitch.
Yep, that happened.
But yeah, they basically Shanghaied him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and when, like I said, he got sold into slavery in Spain, and then he escaped and went to England, and then by the time he got back to the New World, all of his people were dead.
They were dead from that plague.
Yeah. So he had missed that whole thing.
There was another story I heard about one that was living there in England. He lived the high life while he was there as like a museum exhibit, and I'm pretty sure I read this. I don't know if my imagination. He got back to the New World in a rowboat or a small sailboat.
I wonder.
He stole it.
Yeah.
Stole it at like the harbor, the small boat, and came back on his own.
Fuck, man.
That's a hardcore dude, huh? Had his brought his supplies and everything. You know, so he had planned for the trip.
Yeah.
But I think it was a rowboat with a sail on it.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's been done.
Yeah. He made it back to the New World on that.
Fuck, man.
Yeah. I think it was a rowboat with a sail.
That's great.
But he had planned for it. You know, he had his water and all his shit, you know. He wasn't dumb.
Well,
you know?
Yeah. I'm going to set on a 2-month journey across the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah. Think of what kind of balls you need.
Yeah.
You really want to go back home.
Big, giant brass balls.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, like, I kind of feel like if you're in a situation like that, it's probably like, well, I really don't want to stay. I don't want to stay here, like, bad enough that I would rather, like, die out in the ocean.
Yeah.
Like, to risk getting back home. Which, you know.
One of the audience members might remember what it is I'm thinking of.
Yeah, because
I'm fairly sure that was not fiction, that was real.
Yeah. But yeah, so Squanto comes back, like I said, he comes back to the New World in 1619 after escaping from slavery in Europe and found out that all of his people had been killed by disease. Now, like I said, he was born into the Pawtuxet tribe, but when he got back, all his people were gone, so he moved in with the Wampanoag tribe. And he gets brought to the Pilgrim settlement in spring of 1621, rather. He comes with Samoset. And like I said, because he was fluent in English, he was actually kind of, not adopted, but the governor, William Bradford, the same guy who was talking about that guy getting swept off the boat earlier, he actually made him his Indian emissary and like his translator and whatnot. And he also was instrumental in helping the Pilgrims in their negotiations with Massasoit, who was the chief of the Wampanoag, so they were kind of like, you know, trying to come to a peace or whatever. Now, it's right around here where what they call today the first Thanksgiving took place, right around this time. Now, it was the end of the summer of 1621, because it being at the end of November, that didn't happen until like a lot later. They think that this first Thanksgiving probably took place probably in late September or maybe October. Some sources I've say probably it was around September 29th because that was Michaelmas. So that might have been like the best time to do it. So this was the first one that they had. It was supposedly a 3-day festival. Weirdly, because they were kind of celebrating, you know, like the Pilgrims had got their shit together with the help of the Native Americans who were like, here, dummies, like, let me show you how to like fish and like plant shit and everything. So they actually had like a really good harvest. So they were celebrating that. The weird thing about it is that I don't think that the Native Americans were actually invited, but they just kind of showed up, and they're not really sure why they showed up. They think maybe it was some kind of like they were doing some kind of negotiation or something, and they just kind of happened to show up, and it's like, hey, you guys having a party and you didn't invite us? What the fuck? So it's like, but there were actually more Native Americans at the quote-unquote Thanksgiving than Pilgrims. There were actually 90 Native Americans there and probably only about 53 Pilgrims. So the Native Americans brought 5 deer that they had killed to add to the feast or whatever. You know, and there was kind of like I said, they have some, because William Bradford, who wrote a lot about shit that, happened around the time. He kind of wrote a lot about it and was saying how they had turned up with the deer, and he was saying, like, what all the foods were that they had. They don't think that they had turkey. There might have been some wild turkey, but that was kind of like
probably pheasant.
They said waterfowl. Was one of the first things that they said. Also, a lot of fish, shellfish, lobster, that kind of stuff. Maybe eel. That kind of stuff. But some of the stuff that we consider like Thanksgiving food nowadays, like squash, pumpkin, that kind of stuff, they did have that. Because that was, food that was native to that area, and that's why we still eat it largely like nowadays. So the holiday that we think of as Thanksgiving, Big T Thanksgiving, it's weird because what we traditionally think of as like the first Thanksgiving, that one with like the Pilgrims and the Indians and like they had to, which did happen, but they didn't really, I don't think they really gave it much historical significance at the time. I think that kind of came later because you have to imagine that the word Thanksgiving, they had like other Thanksgiving ceremonies. Like anytime there was like some big cool event or, something awesome happened. And so they had like a day of Thanksgiving, like, or feasting or whatever to celebrate. So there was more than one, you know what I mean? So they didn't even really refer to the famous one that happened in 1621. They didn't even really refer to that as like Thanksgiving until later on, because there was one from 1541, that was just like a general Thanksgiving, yay, good shit happened. The first mention of actually the word Thanksgiving with a small t in early colonial history didn't come about till 1623. And this is just to show you how common this shit was, right? So that year, 1623, the Pilgrims, like all summer, had been this horrible, horrible drought. It had been like 2 or 3 months long. And they spent an entire day in July fasting and praying for it to rain. And the next day, guess what? It rained. Like, just lightly. Right. And also, I believe on the same day, a ship arrived from the Netherlands with more settlers and more supplies. So they just thought that was the coolest thing ever and that it was God's providence or whatever. Right. So they said, well, we have to have like a Thanksgiving celebration for that. And that's what they called it. But that was the first time that word had been used like in early colonial writings. And that was 2 years after like the famous one. But so like I'm saying that, they didn't impart this big historical significance at the time because they did them all the time. Like every time there was a good harvest, every time, like I said, they prayed and it rained, they decided that they would celebrate it or whatever. There was also another one in 1631. They thought there was this ship that was supposed to be coming with supplies, and they thought it was lost at sea. And then it pulled into the harbor, and they were like, woot! And then they had a Thanksgiving for that as well. So, and there were ones even before that. There were some like in the 1540s. There was one in Texas. There was one in St. Augustine, Florida, also in the 1500s. So this is something that kind of, and usually it's a religious kind of thing. Usually these are either associated with feasting. Sometimes they do fasting as well. Because like I said, it's usually like religious or like they're giving thanks to God for, doing some shit for them. And shit like that. So, the practice of having a Thanksgiving like every year, like around the same time, it did kind of start to come together like in the mid 1600s, like in New England, like around, but in the South, not so much. It didn't really take hold until later on. It was more a New England thing, like during the 1600s, like around Connecticut and stuff. And they would kind of start having these kind of feasts every year, like to celebrate harvests and whatnot. So I think we are probably going to take a break at the moment. And then when we come back, I want to talk about more like darker side of Thanksgiving and colonial history. I want to talk about the Pequot War, which happened a few years after the supposedly famous Thanksgiving. And that was pretty horrible. Also talk about some cannibalism that went on in early colonial America. Talk about the first official murderer. The first guy that was executed for murder in colonial America, which I just found out today. So we'll kind of talk about that too when we come back from the break, and we will be back in just a minute. You love true crime. I love true crime. And I've spent the last 3 years compiling a series of the most intriguing unsolved murders of the 20th century. It's called The Faceless Villain, and Volume 3 is available now. featuring such fascinating cases as the Ketty murders, the Carey babies case, the Frog Boys, the Alcasar murders, and the Inokashira Park dismemberment incident. The Faithless Villain, Volume 3, is an involving exploration of unsolved slayings spanning the years from 1980 to 1999. Pick up your copy in print or ebook formats on Amazon, or download the audiobook version from audible.com, and get ready for a chilling journey through modern crime history.
Yeah, and so, look at the feet. She just left feet. I don't know. Bare feet, shoes, she doesn't care. Yeah, you getting my running shoes? Okay, why are you eating that? Why are you eating the box? Why are you eating the box though? She also eats everything. She's like a little goat. You're like a little goat. You know that? Yeah. You can't help it. You can't help it. That's just how you do. I know. That little stump is just constantly wagging. You're the funniest kitty. She's like, why are you filming me? Knock it off. Knock it off. Yeah? You gonna eat Mama's shoe? You gonna eat Mama's shoe? Uh-oh, look. Uh-oh. Here comes the other one. Here comes Beijers. She wants in on the action, too. She wants in on the action. What do you think about that, Pookie? What do you think about that? You don't think much of it, do you? I can tell by the look on your face. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Confrontation. Conflict. Conflict. Oh. A peaceful resolution. Well, not now, because... Oh, she can't resist it. She can't resist it. What are you guys gonna do? What are you guys gonna do? Nothing. It looked like... Uh-oh. Oh, Pookie. Oh, Pookie. Yeah? Acting casual? Acting casual? Okay. You didn't even swipe at Beijing's butt. What a good girl you are. What a good girl you are. Beijing wins this round.
All right, we're back. During the break, we were talking about all the different stuff that we were going to make ahead for Thanksgiving, and I said, I was reading the Wikipedia page about the traditional Thanksgiving meal and stuff like that, because I feel like 90% of Americans probably eat the traditional turkey stuffing, gravy, stuffing, I already said that, pumpkin pie, all that kind of stuff. But evidently, if you have different, if your ancestors were immigrants from different parts of the world, they each have their own little thing that they add to it. Because I didn't really know this, but apparently Italian Americans, and please, if you are one, let me know, will have the traditional Thanksgiving dinner, but they also have a big ass lasagna.
Hell yeah.
So they consider lasagna kind of like a Thanksgiving food, and I'm like, I don't have
sense.
A problem with that.
It makes sense.
What's wrong? Lasagna's awesome.
That's a big old family food. You can make a big thing, you know what I mean?
You can make a bunch of it.
It's just delicious.
It is, yes. We make lasagna a lot.
I mean, when you look at the Thanksgiving, the traditional Thanksgiving food, the turkey, gravy, dressing,
potatoes,
mashed potatoes,
yams,
some corn.
Yeah.
All the cranberry stuff, which is sometimes mixed with nuts. You can really see like an Anglo influence to that.
Yeah.
That's an Anglo. It's really the only American meal when you think about it. Everything else came from somewhere else.
Yeah, because that's
even the hamburger. I think it's more German.
It's German, yeah.
But that's uniquely American. But you can see that recipe is written by damn British people.
Yeah.
Or people with British tastes and I guess you could say culinary heritage.
Yeah.
That's what they care. That's like something a British person would like.
Well, it's kind of something because even nowadays, when they have the British the Christmas dinner, which is more like our Thanksgiving, except they don't do pumpkin stuff.
Right.
And I mean, they might now, but since everything's kind of more globalized and everything, but pumpkin, squash, beans, that's kind of North America
Yeah.
type stuff. So
you could see how, but that's versatile. Everybody likes that meal pretty much, I think.
How can you not?
Yeah, I think if it's cooked correctly and if it's in the right context, I think anybody would like that meal. But I could see, if I was Italian, I'd say like, yeah, it's great, but what the fuck is that lasagna?
Where's lasagna?
Where's that fucking lasagna?
God
Right,
damn it.
yeah.
I can see that. Like I said, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Yeah, or pizza.
It's just kind of like people that, because my sister does this too, but it's like on Christmas, it's like she doesn't really go in for like the Christmas dinner or everything. So it's like some people go to like go get Chinese food on Christmas.
Yeah,
and that's like a Christmas tradition to go get Chinese food.
If you're in a Spanish family, you probably want a big old piece of fucking salted fish. But where's that big old fucking bacalhau? Big old salted fish.
They probably do that, actually.
Do that kind of shit, yeah.
Well, because like I said, it's, I feel like a lot of, people, even people that came from immigrant families, which most of us did, kind of, but you add your own kind of like cultural flavor to it, which I never really thought that much about because, like I said, my background is generally Irish, English, and Native American. So, we kind of always had that traditional, just turkey, potatoes, pumpkin pie, all that kind of stuff. But so we never had like any weird additions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like lasagna.
Certain ethnic groups are going to put down lasagna. But I
said, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Right. I fucking love lasagna.
Yeah, I do too. Well, and he makes a really good lasagna.
Yeah, I love all that Italian food.
I do too.
All Italian American food.
Yeah.
Some of those recipes that are from Italy are kind of sparse to me. There's a lot of fish in them, a lot of seafood in them.
Well, I like seafood though.
Yeah, but it's real fishy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I like fish, but it's got to be kind of like a mild fish.
Yeah, you don't.
They had a lot of that shit in Brazil.
Fish. Yeah.
Like Brazilian Italian food, it's like Italian food.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like things like squid inside your pasta, not much sauce. It ends up being just kind of fishy and salty tasting. I'm not really into that flavor profile.
Yeah.
But it's still good. If you ask me though, Italian American food is better than Italian food in a lot of cases, because Italians came here. The ones that did immigrate here came from poverty. When they got around all these groceries,
so it's like we just want to eat all the food.
We're
hungry. God damn it!
When they got around all these groceries, they took that shit to an extreme. Okay.
That could be the motto of the United States.
Yeah.
We're going to put that on the fucking flag.
Yeah, we take that shit to an extreme.
That's what we do.
So
we take everything from where you came from, you just come here and just blow it up to the nth power.
So Italian Americans took like poor people food from Sicily and Italy, but then made it rich people food by fucking putting lots of tomatoes on it, lots of fucking garlic, and lots of cheese, and lots.
Yeah.
That's really
lots of everything.
Lots. That's the name of the game with Italian food. Really, just a lot of it.
Yeah. Lots
of it. And I know you Italian Americans out there are gonna agree. Fucking Italian Americans know how to fucking eat.
They do, yeah.
Hell yeah.
Well, and I really like that's kind of part of their culture, but it's like where everybody gets together. It's like a big family, and it's like everybody, like they just have this massive like plate, table full of food.
And you can't separate fucking Italians from steakhouses either. They love it. They love fucking steakhouse.
I also love steakhouses, and I'm
good.
not even Italian.
Italians know what's good, man.
They do. I just honestly, I like all the food. I'll eat it all. I don't give a shit what it is.
Yeah.
There's very few things that I won't eat.
I should have been Italian.
Yeah.
I should have been Italian. Fuck right.
You do kind of come off like that sometimes. You do kind of come off. You just like a little bit of a gangster. You could have been like.
Yeah, I should have been Italian.
You should have been like an Italian American gangster, like back in the 20s or something.
Well,
I could see you doing that.
I would have been the Irish. That's what they would have called me, because there was always a crazy fucking Irish dude that was with them.
Yeah.
So
every little mafia.
Yeah, they had Irish.
They had one Irish guy. He was like the token.
Yeah.
The token crazy Irish person.
Crazy motherfucker. Yeah.
For sure. All right, so let's talk a little bit about. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Pequot War, because, like I said, this is something that, because in 1621, when the Pilgrims and the Indians got together and had the Thanksgiving dinner and everything like that, I think that they kind of, like a lot of, particularly, in school and stuff like that, they kind of leave you hanging with the story and be like, oh, and then everything was okay. But that's not really how I mean, the peace did not last very long. It was only like a few years later that the Pequot War broke out. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And you look like you want to say something. What's that? You're not going to say nothing?
Just imagining what the world would have been like if I was Italian. Damn. I missed my fucking opportunity, man.
You're going to have to be reincarnated as an Italian American.
Yeah. That should have happened. That shit should have happened.
Yeah. I can see that.
Every fucking Italian dude I knew in the army and shit, fucking, we were tight as shit. Okay.
You're an honorary Italian.
Yeah.
You're an honorary Italian.
But it's just, I don't know. It's having kind of that growing up partially in Brazil.
Yeah.
Mixture of Brazil and Mississippi. It ends up looking a lot like Italian.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah,
it is. That is kind of, because that is kind of a strange combo.
Yeah.
All right. So the Pequot War was something that I don't actually even remember learning about this in school, but it only happened a few years after the very famous first Thanksgiving in 1636 and 1637. Now, so what ended up happening was that the Pequot tribe, their territory was about 250 square miles in what is now southeastern Connecticut. Now, during the early 17th century, there were approximately 8,000 Pequot men, women, and children living in this particular territory. And they had like a lot of power and influence, like over some of the other tribes in the area and whatnot. Now, in 1633 and 1634, there was a smallpox epidemic, and half of the Pequot tribe died. So, the 1620s, the Dutch were already here. And the Dutch and the Pequot tribe controlled pretty much all the trade in the region. Now, the Pequot were kind of like trying to lord it over other tribes, like I said. Like, they had like a lot of power between them and the Dutch. And they had actually, by 1635, they had extended their kind of political power by various things, intermarriage, warfare, various other things. Now, the Pequot War, which broke out in 1636, as I said, that was actually the Pequot people fighting against a coalition of English settlers from Massachusetts Bay, the Connecticut, and Saybrook colonies. And the English also had Native American, just like we were saying before, they had Native American allies. The Narragansett tribe and the Mohegan tribe were fighting on the side of the English against the Pequot. So like I said, this is a lot more complicated because some of the Indian tribes were fighting with the Europeans against other Native Americans.
Yeah, and here's another thing. This will teach you something about extraterrestrial communication and fucking
extraterrestrial.
Yeah. The reason why a lot of these Indian wars had busted out is because the white man would make an alliance with an Indian tribe. And as soon as that happened, the other Indian tribes that were not in that alliance got fucking paranoid that Indian tribe would get preferential treatment.
Yeah.
In terms of trade deals, money, and weaponry. So they would wig the fuck out and try to fight, you know what I mean? To try to stop an alliance or to get in on an alliance or to wipe out a fucking enemy Indian tribe before that alliance had taken root. It was shit like that. When you start getting involved in international politics like that, there's always blowback.
Yeah.
You do what you think is the right thing. Hey, we're gonna make an alliance with this tribe. Turns out that tribe had enemies.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Well, and that's what happened in this situation.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about it is that, at the point where the English first arrived, like I said, the Pequot and the Dutch, they had like a huge stake in like all the trading and stuff like that, particularly the fur trade, also wampum, which was, the beads and everything. So they kind of controlled the whole trade. So there was a lot of other Native American tribes that were resentful of the Pequot because they felt that they were kind of like lording it over them and they didn't really like it because they were like controlling all the trade in the area. So when the English showed up, some of the Native American tribes were trying to get in with them, or were trying to kind of like, hey, why don't you guys fight with us against these guys? Because these guys have been like, stepping on our dicks like all this time and we don't like it. So there were like tensions simmering for a long time before war actually broke out. Now, so then there were like a couple of incidents that occurred that kind of pushed, the whole situation toward war. One of these was the murder of a trader named John Stone and his entire crew. They were actually killed on the Connecticut River by the Pequot in 1634. Now, they're not entirely sure why this guy was killed. The Pequot apparently had their reasons. They felt that they were justified in killing him. But because he was an Englishman, the English were kind of like, okay, well, we can't let that shit slide. Like, we can't make it look like, oh, the Native Americans can go around killing English people willy-nilly. So that kind of, the tensions between, the English and the Pequot started building up even more and more. And then there was another trader named John Oldham who was also found murdered on his ship off Block Island, which is now near Rhode Island. And that was in July of 1636. Now, this time, I'm not sure. I don't think they were Pequot Indians, but they were Manassas Indians. But these two murders, like, happening in sequence, on top of, like, all the other tensions that have been building up about the trading and, among other tribes and stuff like that, kind of, like, pushed the whole thing into a skirmish. And the English were finally just kind of like, okay, that's enough. So in August of 1636, the English in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, they sent 90 soldiers to Block Island and sent them to Pequot territory to get revenge for the two traders that they had murdered. Now, they had like a fight with the Manassas Indians. They set fire to their cornfields and their villages. And then they sailed on to the Pequot territory. And they tried to get the Pequot to come out and fight them, but the Pequot were like, fuck you, we're not doing that. Either that or they weren't there or whatever. But they wouldn't come out and fight them. So then they did the same thing there. They burned their villages and cornfields down. And then after that, the Pequot decided they were going to take revenge. So they actually attacked the fort at the Saybrook settlement. And this was actually a very successful raid. Like we were talking about before, like Native Americans' battle tactics were actually much better than the Europeans at this point because they decisively won this battle. This was the longest engagement of the war. They pretty much set fire to all the Englishmen's shit, like all their warehouses and whatnot. And any settlers that came running out, they just killed them. So they had fought Europeans before, so they knew kind of the tactics. They were familiar with, the ways that they did battle. And also, like I said, they were a lot more familiar with the terrain, and their weapons were better, as we said. Now, this war actually ended up lasting 11 months, and, involved several thousand combatants. There were several battles. Now, in the first 6 months, it looked like the Pequot were going to win because they won pretty much every battle that they fought. It's not that the English were complete dummies, but like I said, the Pequot were familiar with their fighting tactics and were more used to doing like guerrilla warfare type stuff. So they actually won all of the battles in the first half of the war.
Yeah, the white man's way of war was something that happened kind of like on a map.
Yeah.
Where you're capturing cities or capturing, it was like something off of a chessboard.
Yeah.
That's not how Indians did it, man. Indians were practical. It was more kind of like Vietnam.
Yeah, it was pretty much exactly like that. But so like I said, for the first half of the war, it looked like the Pequot were probably going to be victorious. However, the turning point came when the Connecticut colony declared war on the Pequot, and this was in May of 1637. And this was after the Pequot had attacked an English settlement at a place called Wethersfield. Now, this pissed the English off a lot because apparently at this, like, women and children were killed in this particular siege. The Pequot had killed them. So the English got really super mad about that. So the English, like, gathered their shit and went to fight the Pequot again as, like, retaliation. This ended up being the most significant battle of the entire war, which is now known as the Mystic Campaign or the Mystic Massacre. This happened from May 10th to the 26th of 1637. This was 77 Connecticut soldiers and 250 Native American allies who were fighting with the English. They attacked and burned the Pequot village at Mystic and killed 400 Pequot Indians, including 175 women and children. Killed them in less than an hour.
Slaughter.
Half of them were burned to death. So, not a nice way to go.
Yeah.
Those who tried to escape from, tried to run out from the fire and everything were shot by the English or were shot by the bows and arrows of the Narragansett or the Mohegans who were fighting with the English. Now,
some people might say, oh man, how could they do that? Well, different times, man. You couldn't just make a peace treaty. They'd come right back and fight you later on. This shit basically had to wipe them out. That was the only way to get rid of them. That was the thinking of the time.
Yeah, they pretty much did. Oh my goodness.
Which that's pretty much the way it was going on back to Roman times. It wasn't really dividing the women and children from the army is kind of a newer concept.
Yeah.
And it's also a European concept.
Yeah.
Indians did the same kind of thing when they, if they really wanted to wipe out another tribe.
Yeah.
They probably, their Indian allies probably taught them how to deal with them. I'm trying to bet.
That might have been the case. Yeah. Because, like I said, some of the people, when the Pequot were running out, some of them were killed by other Native Americans, from other tribes. Because, like I said, there was a lot of resentment against the Pequot because them and the Dutch settlers, they held, they were very powerful in trade, and, a lot of other tribes felt like they were getting the short end of the stick. So there was a lot of resentment there.
This isn't civilization, man. This is Mad Max. You know what I mean?
Much.
And if you had if you wanted to go to war with the tribe, you better kill them all.
Yeah.
Just come back.
Yeah, they did. They did actually kill most of the Pequot. They took, I believe it was 7 of them. I believe that they took prisoner.
Yeah.
But that, they killed several hundred people, and it was kind of like the defeat of the entire tribe.
Yeah.
And they ended up even the English soldiers and stuff and some of their Native American allies, they, the Pequot, after they started getting their asses kicked, they started fleeing, they tried to get away. And, the English soldiers went after them, and they just, executed all the leaders, and they just all the, the men, they killed all the men, they pretty much enslaved.
Wiped them out.
They enslaved the remaining children and women.
Yeah.
So that was kind of that was kind of the decisive battle. The war went on for about another, month and a half. But that was kind of the big turning point whereas before the Pequot had been winning, but now, they were kind of pretty much wiped out. The last battle of the war was called the Swamp Fight in Fairfield, Connecticut. And so that was the Pequot War, and that was just kind of like I said, I feel like this is something that is not really covered in history classes.
Well, there's hundreds of those.
So much, but there were so many of them. This one was kind of important too, and it was significant, I guess, because it happened only a few years after the whole Thanksgiving thing.
Yeah,
where I think a lot of people, or they used to perceive, there was this kind of so there was sort of an uneasy peace between, but that's not the case.
There evidently was a shit ton of wars between Indian tribes that were never recorded.
Well, they probably wouldn't, because they wouldn't have written it down or anything like that, because probably shit like that happened all the time.
It was happening all the time, but I'm talking about during the time, even in the 1800s, during the time when the white man was there. Yeah. There were Indian wars going on in certain areas that were just not recorded. Yeah. The white man didn't pay it. White civilization didn't even notice.
Well, yeah, because they weren't familiar.
They weren't there.
They weren't there before they got there, or they weren't really paying attention.
So there was all kinds of stuff that happened.
Yeah, so it's really interesting to think how much of that history has been lost, because a lot of it was not written down. Yeah, particularly they didn't really.
Indians, for the most part, weren't writing anything down.
Yeah, they didn't. There was
a few tribes that had writing, but I think that was mostly on the East Coast. Yeah, and what they call them, they were the 5 civilized tribes. Yeah, because part of the thing was that they had a written language. Those were all agricultural Indians. They weren't. I don't think they weren't buffalo chasing Indians.
They weren't nomadic.
No.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It's it's sad, because I feel like a lot of shit that we know, the common perception of Native Americans, particularly their history, is kind of as told through the eyes of the Europeans. Right. Because they're the ones that wrote all the shit down.
They were the ones that wrote it down for the most part.
Yeah. We don't really know what went on before the Europeans got here, which is kind of
Yeah, it's kind of sad, all that lost
It is
history.
sad. It's like, because like thousands of years, and it's like, we'll probably never know what happened unless somebody invents a fucking time machine.
For the most part, a tribe didn't last too long, a couple generations. So you're talking maybe 60 years. Some of them lasted over 100 years, 200 years, some of the really big ones. But they were constantly, merging with other tribes and breaking apart and forming other tribes, and then later going to war with somebody else. And like I said, ethnic group had a lot to do with it too. And there was more than one Indian ethnic group.
Yeah.
There was several different lifestyles going on, different ways to make a living.
Yeah,
in
like
the
I
new
said,
world.
it wasn't just one
thing
type of thing. It was
No.
just like, it was all different kinds. It was like a really diverse population.
So
I mean, you're talking about millions of people.
yeah,
Like before the plague, like wiped a lot of them out.
yeah. So there's no telling. I would think that most of them were probably, like Aztecs, but they
Yeah.
weren't living in cities. Most of them, you know what I mean. So I guess you could say they weren't like Aztecs. Some out of Mad Max,
Yeah.
kind of.
Like I said, although some of
Yeah.
them were like agricultural, so they did
Yeah.
have like established
Yeah.
like villages that they
Right.
lived in and grew food and stuff. Because like
Yeah.
I said, they knew how to do that because they had to
Yeah.
show the pilgrims how to do it. Because they didn't know, they weren't familiar with pumpkins and
They
all
knew
that
what
type of
was. They
stuff.
knew what was up, and some of them were fiercer than others, and evidently some of them were cool. Just depending on each one, they had their own makeup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go back a few years and talk about cannibalism.
Cannibalism.
Yeah.
You gonna throw cannibalism in,
I'm gonna throw cannibalism
on
in.
a turkey day?
Well, I thought it was kind of appropriate.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Okay.
Well, it's just like I was reading like all these different things about colonial history, and
Yeah.
I was just kind of like dark side of colonial history. So
Okay.
like all this different shit was coming up, like all the shit about the crime and cannibalism and stuff like that. And I was like, man, I'm gonna put all this shit in the show. I don't care if it goes together or not.
Okay.
So we're actually going back to 1609. So this is prior to the Plymouth colony. This is the Jamestown colony, like kind of the first permanent settlement. So 1609, and for a long time, because that winter was so terrible, and there was like a lot of writings from that time where people maybe suggested that they had resorted to cannibalism and various other things, but they had never found physical evidence of it. However, now they have. And I just read this actually, I think they found it in 2012, but I'm not sure like when this article came out. So they might have just like reported on it fairly recently. So they did an excavation at this historic site in Virginia, in the Jamestown, where the Jamestown settlement was. They ended up finding dog carcasses, cat carcasses, horse carcasses, because they were eating pretty much all their pets and horses and whatnot. Because this was called the starving time, But they also found some bones that they later found out belonged to a 14-year-old English girl who they had dismembered and eaten.
Damn.
Like they could tell by,
She must have been dead though. She died. or
Yeah.
something?
Now, the forensic anthropologist that kind of led this study, he said, I don't see any evidence that the girl was murdered to be eaten, but probably she had just died of something else. They don't know what, but probably she had just died of something else, and then they just decided to butcher her and eat her.
Got sick.
So he doesn't see any. I'm not saying they didn't murder her. He just says he doesn't see any evidence.
It's not in the
of that.
character. Not in the character of that culture.
I feel like that might have been a bridge too far.
Yeah.
Particularly like a young girl like that.
That was somebody's daughter or loved one or something. They died there, and they decided, well, to survive, we're going to eat her.
Yeah.
She probably got sick.
I mean,
Sick
they seem like they were really, really desperate. And like I said, I'll kind of get into that. But it's like, so they found...
These were Christians. They weren't gonna...
Yeah, and you can tell, this is what's really sad, is that, according to this... excuse me. According to this report by this forensic anthropologist, and this is the same guy that worked on, like, the Jeffrey Dahmer case, the Kennewick Man case. So this is, like, not a slouch, okay? So he's saying that the sad thing about this is that some of the cuts that they found, like particularly the ones in the head, because it looks like what they did was that they cut her head open, they ate her face and her brain. Like they would eat the brain first because I guess it rots the quickest. You know what I mean? So they would have like cut open the back of her head and taken her brain out to eat, and then they would have eaten like her legs and her face, like, her cheeks and stuff. But they're like the cuts that are on the forehead are, he called them like tentative. It's almost like the person didn't want to do it or wasn't very experienced in butchering animals.
Yeah.
And was like freaked out by the whole situation. He's like, you could tell that they were not.
They probably did something kind of like skin the head and stuff and make some kind of sausage or.
It seems like that's probably what they did.
Something like that. Something where you really could. Because I wouldn't think that they'd eat a whole face. They probably cut it up into small pieces.
Yeah,
and,
I imagine they probably would have made it into a stew or something like, just so people wouldn't think about what it was that they were eating. You don't want it to look like a person.
Made something like head cheese or something. Maybe.
Like I said, this isn't like the Green Inferno where it's like they just like chopped the dude up and like just ate the leg and shit.
They did to her something that you would do to pork or you know what I mean, or beef. It's probably made some kind of head cheese or sausage or something.
But he said it looks like that somebody like started chopping the forehead.
This is in the winter?
And then because it was because the winter had been like so bad, and they had eaten pretty much everything else. They'd eaten their dogs, they'd eaten their horses, they'd eaten the cats.
Yeah.
They had started eating like rats, mice, leather, shoe leather. Shit like that. So they were starving. So this was kind of like I said, they had long known and suspected that there had probably been some cannibalism going on in Jamestown, but they hadn't found physical evidence of it until just now. So they think what happened was that they said they found these cut marks in her forehead that were like really, like someone that clearly didn't really want to do it or wasn't that experienced. It says, then it looks like they turned her over. And they said there were 4 strikes on the back of the head. One of them looked like it had split the skull open. Like I said, they would split the skull open and take the brain out. And they would have eaten that first. They don't know who this girl was. They're just calling her Jane. Like I said, they're not entirely certain if she was murdered, if she just died of natural causes. The forensic anthropologist thinks she probably just died of natural causes and then they just ended up eating her.
I don't think they murdered her.
He's like, he's like, it just doesn't seem like they would have done that. So
it was available, so they ate her.
That's what I mean. Because what ended up happening with these people was similar to what happened to, the later separatists, the pilgrims and stuff like that. So like what happened with the Jamestown colony, this was founded in 1607, and they actually had 104 settlers that had come over in 3 ships, but only 38 of them survived the first 9 months of Jamestown. So like I said, it's just kind of like the Pilgrim situation where it's like they all come over here, but then immediately starvation, disease, shit like that. Like, a lot of them are like decimated. At least, the whole thing, like a bunch of them die. They think that maybe the water was poisoned. That maybe they pooped in it and like they were drinking it, or maybe there was arsenic in it or something like that. There might have been some other diseases that they didn't know about. And when they got there in 1609 or in those couple of years, that region was going through like one of the worst droughts like in centuries. So it's like they showed up and like they're trying to, eke a living out of this fucking wilderness, and the atmospheric conditions, the climatic conditions are just like terrible.
My understanding of what mostly went wrong with these colonies is that these people they were basically suburban people.
Yeah, that's exactly what they were.
And they didn't have really any training, and their kind of mental philosophy that they grew up with wasn't real conducive for somebody taking action. What they would do is they would get in the colony in a big group and eat up all the supplies and wait for somebody to do something, but nobody really did anything, so they'd all just kind of lean on one another, and the next thing you know, they were all starving. And as they died, they just kind of eat one another. Just they were the kind of people that waited to be told what to do.
I do kind of get that impression.
And they were the kind of people that, well, I'm not going to go out and go hunt an animal. I'm going to wait for somebody else to go do it, or something like that. You know what I mean? They didn't really take matters into their own hands. I guess you could say, I think they were a little too collective, like they were too collectivist. Yeah. You know what I mean? They would wait for the system to feed them, but the system wasn't feeding them. It didn't know how to work in that world.
Well, I think that particularly if you had been brought up at that time, in the 17th century, if you had grown up in England or in another prosperous like place in Europe, you know, they had big cities, you know, yeah, it wasn't like nowadays. They didn't have all the modern conveniences and stuff, but you had grown up in big cities. There was like a system in place. There was like, you know, shit to do, you know what I mean?
Waiting for the system to feed
So
you.
you kind of come to this wilderness. I think it didn't dawn on them that there was no one was going to help them.
That there was no system, right.
That there was no system. It's like you had to
I'm saying this based on my experience with the infantry in the army, where we're fucking, you know, walking around, building fortifications on top of hilltops. You do what you're told, and you wait for the food to be delivered.
Yeah.
I guarantee you these colonies were kind of run kind of like a military organization.
Yeah.
To where they all had their own little task to do. And then they're kind of waiting to be fed by the collective. And the guy who's in charge of it is some kind of preacher. If he fails, then that means no one eats.
Yeah.
And because they're all doing their jobs, they don't say, well, fuck the church.
Yeah.
I'm going to go get a rabbit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Instead, they go, no, I'm going to sit here and, you know, do what they told me. I'm going to build this fence, or I'm going to, you know, help dig this well, or... But it gets desperate real quick, so then they kind of get in a defensive posture, and they just kind of wait around for supplies to be delivered. That's what I think was going on. Maybe the boat will come.
Maybe that's what it was, because they did have
thinking.
Supply ships come sometimes, so it's like kind of like, oh, maybe it'll come tomorrow.
Maybe the boat will come.
Maybe it'll come tomorrow.
And then, because the guy's probably going to think that, well, if I go out and catch a rabbit, I won't be able to eat it. I'll have to give it to them, and they'll have to divide it up.
Yeah.
So it's the same as not eating.
Yeah, maybe that's what it
probably
was. So he's just kind of like, why should I expend all that effort?
Yeah, so I'm just going to sit here and wait for the boat to show up.
Maybe they were all just sitting around waiting for a boat to show up that never showed up.
I think that's probably what's going on. I'm trying
terrible.
to think of the inertia. You know what I mean?
I can see how that would happen.
Inertia.
Like I said, it kind of seems like nowadays it's people that, you know, every now and then, you know, we watch that fucking shit. What's that show where they like drop people out in the middle of the fucking wilderness, naked and afraid?
Exactly.
Well, it's kind of like, I would think that as many seasons as that show has done, you would think that if you wanted to be on that show and like campaign to be on the show and you had to audition and stuff like that, it's like you'd think that you would watch all of the other seasons and like be prepared for the shit. But it seems like there's always one or two every season that is not prepared. Yeah. It's like they drop you, you're naked and afraid in the middle of this fucking wilderness, and you have to find your own fire, you have to find your water, you have to find your own food, and it almost seems like every now and then you get one person that's on there that's like surprised
that it's hard.
That it's like that it's hard, and it's like, where's 7-Eleven? What is it? You know, none of them say that, but I feel like they're thinking it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think they always get one or two of those just to make it more entertaining, like for the show.
I think there's also an effect where, well, we can't make it. If I go out and fucking hunt a rabbit for myself and everybody does it, then that means it's every man for himself, and the church is breaking down.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? So I think that's part of the...
They might have been so...
We can't be every man for himself.
Yeah.
I think that's really what they're talking about. But that's how the Indians did it, basically. It was every man for themselves. Everybody go out and go catch some shit to eat.
Yeah.
And meet us back here when you got your stuff.
Yeah.
That's what they did.
And then I feel like they would kind of share it out.
Yeah, they share it out, you know, because you had old people and you had people that weren't hunting, you know what I mean? But I don't think they were doing that.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it was probably the thing, like they were so religious that they couldn't think outside of that framework. Couldn't think of some kind of framework. And they thought that, well, God won't let any bad shit happen. Maybe that's what they thought. Or maybe, like, if bad shit happened, that was just, like, a test.
I think it was a mixture of very religious, thinking, you know, they couldn't get out of the box. They were very suburban, but be a word. They didn't know that, they didn't have that word back then. There was such thing as a suburb. But, you know, a modern audience would know what they had a very suburban mentality, I think.
Yeah.
And they were also, I think, kind of group-oriented. You know what I mean? Because this is a church. They're seeing themselves as a church. So to go out and try to try to survive on your own because the system is breaking down would be kind of like a betrayal.
Yeah, I can see that.
That's what they're doing.
That's probably exactly what it was.
I would have been like, you know what?
I'm hungry.
These fuckers are starving, and they're not feeding me.
Y'all can just sit here on your asses and stuff.
I'll holler at you. That's what I said. That's what I said.
I'm gonna go catch some fish.
Yeah,
I'll catch you guys later.
Fish. Okay.
I'm gonna go eat.
I'm gonna check out them Indians. They looked well fed.
Yeah. They probably got some good shit.
They probably know what they're doing. Okay, they don't seem to have this system that you guys have, and I'm gonna go see what system they have. And I pretty much think that's what happened with Roanoke.
I kind of feel like that too.
Like,
I don't think there's much mystery about that. I think they were just kind of like, yeah, this is better.
Yeah, we're gonna go
this.
engine.
Let's do this.
Yeah, we're gonna go engine.
This this is much better. We don't have to wear all these restrictive clothing. It's like we can actually like.
We'll go hang out with some dudes that know what's up.
Yeah, I kind of feel
and
like
I think that's what happened with that. It was, in a way, almost voluntary starvation.
Yeah.
They just didn't realize it was voluntary.
Yeah, because they just kept waiting.
They couldn't think outside that box.
Like I said, they're waiting for the supply ship. They're waiting for Amazon Prime to bring them some food from across the ocean.
I think they saw themselves as an extension of Europe, and that somehow the European system owed them a meal ticket. And that the supply ship will be here.
Yeah. Because they did send supply ships.
Yeah,
but
if
it's
the
like,
supply ship didn't show up, then you were fucked.
Yeah.
But they didn't want to think that way.
That's far.
Yeah.
The Atlantic Ocean is very big.
Yeah. And they're thinking, well, it's only a month away. That's only a few weeks. And it's probably already halfway here. So let's just sit here and wait for 2 weeks, and they're going to come bring us some groceries.
Yeah. Well, like I said, look how excited
English
they were.
Food.
They had a whole Thanksgiving feast thing when a
the
ship that they thought was lost
Yeah.
at sea turned up, and they were like, "Yay, party time!"
Yeah. And then they had
so they were super happy about it.
They could only hunt with those.
All their stuff.
They could only hunt with those matchlocks, and I bet you all the powder got wet.
Yeah.
And the match cord
and they
all
probably
got
couldn't
fucking
hit
wet.
Shit.
And then they couldn't hunt without that, and they didn't know much about trapping. And then they probably didn't know much. Well, you would think they would know about fishing.
See, that's what I thought too, but I feel like a lot of the stuff I read said no, the Native Americans kind of had to teach them how to do that too.
Ridiculous. Then they were fucking.
mean, they have water.
They were out
in
of it.
Europe, right?
Yeah, and they've been fishing. They've been fishing in their lakes for centuries.
You would think that they would
so
kind of
they would
like.
know.
I mean, you would think that when you got there, it's like, hey, it's an ocean. There's fish in there. We can eat those.
Word to the wise. They got all these dudes prepping. They're going to prep for the end of the world and doomsday, and they want to store all this food. You can store food. You can't store a lifetime of food. You got to eat on your own.
Yeah.
All right? And the easiest way is get you a fish hook and a line.
Yeah, just...
You can catch fish all day long if you're outside of... If you're outside
That's
of the city.
definitely what it seems like the easiest. Because it's like you don't have to go running after animals, hunting them, nothing like that. You just put out a trap line with a bunch of trot line with a bunch of hooks on it.
Yeah.
And it's like, fish is very good for you.
Yeah. And
it's a very good protein.
Yeah, the food was out there for the taking, but maybe the mentality was as well. The water's frozen; it's frozen on top, and it's cold, and I don't really want to leave the camp.
I'm just gonna sit here in my blankie and wait for.
Because I've been in that position in Korea. It's fucking cold. You don't even want to.
Yeah, I know. It's like no one wants to do anything in the wintertime. Like I just,
starving, and I know there's fish in that water. The tops of it frozen. I'm gonna have to fucking break the top of that frozen water and get down in there and fucking put a line
maybe
in
I'll
there
just
and wait.
eat my own fingers instead.
Maybe I'll just maybe tomorrow the boat will come.
Yeah,
that's what they're doing.
Yeah, they kept like procrastinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So listen to this sad shit. So like several years later, like one of the guys who lived through it, he was like the president of Jamestown. Like during it, he wrote in 1625. He wrote about what had happened. And this is what he wrote. He said...
Was I close?
What? He said, well, this is what he said. He says, having fed upon our horses and other beasts as long as they lasted, we were glad to make shift with vermin, as dogs, cats, rats, and mice, as to eat boots, shoes, or any other leather.
Okay, yeah.
And now famine beginning to look ghastly and pale in every face, that nothing was spared to maintain life, and to do those things which seem incredible, as to dig up dead corpses out of graves and to eat them. So they ate dead bodies also.
Wonder how long they had been rotten before they froze.
Well, yeah. I hope that they were frozen.
Yeah.
I mean, He also said, and some have licked up the blood which hath fallen from their weak fellows. So they're good. It's like cannibalism and vampirism.
But not a mention of food source. Of like, well, we tried to hunt or we tried to...
Yeah, it's like they didn't
I'm telling you, I think I got it. I think because,
they didn't even try.
I got it. I got experience. I got experience.
Like I said, what did they think was going to happen when they came over here? Did they think that there was going to be, like I said, did they think there was going to be like Amazon Prime?
They got in...
Or Uber Eats or something? What the fuck?
It got cold. Cold makes you lazy. That laziness caused an inertia of just staying put.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, fuck it, I'm going to go get something to eat. I'm gonna get something good.
They
to
just
eat.
kept waiting.
Because food is everywhere.
Well,
out
yeah,
there, even in the winter.
like fucking hell.
Even in the winter.
Yes,
is
it's
everywhere.
hard,
You
but
can-
it's like you don't want to starve to death. For
Wintertime,
fuck's
you
sake.
can set up snares for rabbits. There's all you do is find trails that the rabbits are taking. There's a lot of shit, but they're not leaving the camp for
Yeah.
some reason.
Too cold.
Lots and lots too cold. Too cold.
They're like, well, like I said, they came from England, which is like it's cold and wet, but it's not like New England cold.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like harsh winters like that.
Yeah,
I mean,
but they
their winters are fairly mild.
But they should have had, they should have had the clothing.
They
And I think
should
they
have,
did. I
but
think
like
they
I said,
did.
this is why
Maybe they didn't.
I feel like they didn't really plan ahead. I don't think they knew what to expect.
Maybe they didn't have the clothing.
I really don't think they knew what to expect when they came
Yeah.
here. I mean,
I'm
maybe
assuming a motherfucker's got a jacket.
you would think.
Yeah.
I mean, you would think that they had imagined it, but I don't think until they experienced it. I don't think. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of
Yeah.
like one of those things where it's like you imagine something, you're like, oh, it's going to be this, that, and the other. But when
Right.
you actually experience it, it's kind of different. So I kind of feel like, oh, they say, oh, it's going to be hard and it's going to suck and everything. But I thought,
They didn't know the reality.
I think
of
they
it.
thought that they would prevail, like they would get it all
Yeah.
together. Yeah, we know what we're doing. We're like city folk, and we're
We're
civilized.
educated.
Yeah, and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I think they knew they would know what to do when they got there,
Yeah,
and then
let
when
me-
they got there, it was like completely different.
Let me
than what
set
they
some of
thought.
these people straight. Having fucking survived fucking Korean winters with the first and the 506 infantry at 50 degrees below zero, okay, with limited sleep during team spirit against against the North Koreans. All your intelligence and all your education can get thrown right out the fucking window when 50 degrees below zero hits you.
Yeah.
You think you're smart? Fuck all that.
Well, like it just
you
freezes your
become
brain.
a
You
fucking
can't.
zombie.
Yeah.
And there's just intelligence cannot outthink that cold.
Yeah.
It's just mind numbing, literally.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said.
Yeah.
So this.
You become infantile and animalistic quick.
Yeah.
You just
Well, like I said, your
some
brain
people
can't
can't-
function
yeah.
in that temperature.
and some people crack, but most people would crack. But
Yeah.
infantry guys, they've already been weeded out.
Yeah.
There's something. We're a shark, like we're already dumb. So we can do.
So it's like we just
It's
keep
like
on.
a shark.
Like a shark
Yeah.
swimming through the
It's
water.
like a shark swimming through the water.
That's my shark swimming through the water
Yeah,
motion.
you can give a shark a lobotomy, but it's still a shark. It's still going through the water.
We're talking about like fucking sharks on this
Shark.
Thanksgiving show.
Sharks with lobotomies.
Does anybody eat shark for Thanksgiving?
Shark is fantastic.
It is actually. I have eaten shark. It's very
Shark.
good.
Although
I
was,
like pretty much anything that comes out of the ocean.
swordfish and marlin are a lot better though.
That's true.
That's like the fucking caribou of fucking of fish. You ever
Yeah.
had caribou? Oh,
Not that I.
man.
No, I don't think so.
Fantastic.
Like I
better
said-
than any beef.
I've heard that.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I would eat it. I don't have any qualms about that at all. There's only like I said, there's very few things that I won't eat.
Yeah, caribou fucking
Like
gorgeous.
some weird, like you know how like the weird shit, like let's bury these eggs in the dirt for like 100 years and then we'll eat
Yeah.
them like when they're rotten. It's just like I'm not gonna eat that because what the
Yeah.
fuck, man? Just stop it. But it's you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like what is that? Is it who does that? The Finns or something like that, where they like bury the fish and it gets all rotten.
I don't know. There's
And then
Norwegians eat all kinds
or
of
Norwegians,
crazy
yeah. But
fish,
it's
eating
like
fishy.
you know anything like okay, food rots and it stinks and tastes bad. That's nature telling you don't
Not to eat
that.
that.
I'm just a pro tip.
Yeah.
I'm just saying like other than that though, I'll try pretty much anything. I don't like everything, but it's funny because I was a really picky eater when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But as I
The one
got
thing
older,
I didn't like was sauerkraut. Couldn't stand even the smell of it until I got to be about 19, 20, and all of a sudden I loved it. But when I was a kid, I fucking hated sauerkraut.
I can take it or leave it.
I like it now.
I mean, because you've made it before, like we've made it
Yeah.
a couple of times. I can eat it, but it's not my favorite. I would rather not.
sauerkraut on a
but-
hot dog with mustard. Man.
Because didn't you have like you made what'd you make like that pork in the crock
Yeah.
pot and you put
Yeah.
like with sauerkraut
Pork
and
and
stuff?
sauerkraut, yeah.
Yeah, like it's good, but I would just like rather have it without. You know what I mean? It's just one of
Yeah.
those things.
Like pork, sauerkraut, and mustard. Potatoes.
Most things I don't hate them. I would
Yeah.
just rather not have them.
German potato salad.
Oh, I do like German potato salad.
Yeah.
I wonder if anybody has that for Thanksgiving.
No. Yeah.
But yeah, so this girl that they ate in Jamestown, and she probably wasn't the only one. I mean, like I said, because this was a bad winter and like I said, there have long been hints that there was cannibalism going on, so I find it hard to believe that there was just one girl that they ate. It was probably more than one. But this is just the one that they found. Like, they found her skull.
They
and
ate
some other
everybody
bodies.
who died.
They probably ate everybody that died.
Yeah.
So they don't know who this girl was, like I said. They imagine that they did like an isotope analysis of her bones and stuff, and she had like a high protein diet, so they think that probably she was kind of like maybe the daughter of somebody kind of important. They think that she had come over like on one of the resupply ships, like in the 1600s. Oh my god, the cats are fighting out there in the hall. And they think that more than one person probably butchered her, because they're like, you know what I mean, where they ate her brain and they ate like parts of her face and stuff like that, but the cuts up there looked like someone that didn't really want to do it or wasn't very experienced, whereas they also ate some of her leg muscles and stuff like that, and the butcher marks like on the lower half of her body were a lot more confident, like someone that so they think it was at least two different people that were butchering this girl. It's like, isn't that horrible? Yeah. It's like I said, I'm pretty sure that it happened like more than once. So like, remember the dude that I was just talking about that wrote that letter about them eating like their cats, dogs, horses, boots, dead bodies and whatnot? Yeah. This same guy, he also said, because he was president of the Jamestown colony at the time, right? Like during the starving time in 1609. He said, and I guess he wasn't embarrassed about it because he admitted this in a fucking letter. He said that he tortured and burned to death a dude who said that he had killed, salted, and ate his pregnant wife. Now, They have never found this woman's body. They found this girl's body who was about 14 years old. So that's why they're saying that that cannibalism was probably a lot more widespread, like during that particular time.
What did he do to that dude? He tortured and killed and ate him?
No. The president of the colony.
Yeah.
Because this guy had admitted that he had killed his pregnant wife, put salt on her, and ate her.
Oh, he ate his own wife.
So that he ate his own wife.
Right.
So then the president tortured and burned him alive as punishment for salting.
But that was actually standard in the 1400s. That was the kind of shit you did for
This
crime.
was 1600s.
1600s. That's still...
Yeah.
Same time. They're putting people to the wheel and burning people at the stake and shit like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, like I said, this shit was going on, and I imagine that the more... Because they are excavating in the area. This was, like I said, this 14-year-old girl's body was the first physical evidence of human cannibalism at Jamestown that they had found, but they are sure that they will probably find more. Because, like I said, there have been, like, other written records that maybe that happened. Like I said, they were also eating dead people, eating corpses and shit like that. So now let's move on. I got curious, like I said, when I was reading about all these kind of like dark side of colonial history, like I was all over the web, like reading all this stuff. I was interested to see who the first official murderer was for some reason, like in the American colonies. So lucky for me, Google came up with the solution. This dude was named John Billington. And he was a pilgrim that came over on the Mayflower, and also one of the dudes that signed the Mayflower Compact, as a matter of fact. He was actually considered America's first murderer, and he was the first one that was executed for murder. This was in 1630. So now he was originally from England, born there about 1582. In 1603, he married a woman named Eleanor Lockwood, and they had two sons, John and Francis. Now, in England, they were very poor. And they didn't really have a lot of prospects for their future. England was very overpopulated, very crowded, and they didn't really have a lot of skills, I guess, or whatever. So they decided, in 1620, there had been like these businessmen going around who were like trying to recruit people to go over to the New World to colonize Northern Virginia. So this family thought, well, we don't really have anything going on here. Life kind of sucks over here. So we're going to go to the New World. Now, problem was, and we have mentioned this a couple times in the show before, but because he took these businessmen up on their offer, he had to sign a contract that basically put the whole family into indentured servitude for 7 years, because these businessmen were paying for their passage. We're paying for them to come over and paying for them to set up, because they were looking for people to colonize this area. So they had to basically go into be labor for these people until 1627 for 7 years. So indentured servitude, fairly.
Slavery in a way.
Yeah, and they're supposed to, and they had to work 6 days a week. They didn't specify. They're like, whatever, like fishing, carrying things from place to place, supply ships, whatever. It's
General
like,
labor.
whatever labor you had to do.
Yeah.
Now, there was, even at the time, there was like a lot of dissension about this because a lot of people at the time were like, hey, that's indentured servitude and we don't really like it.
Yeah.
Even though, like I said, these businessmen were essentially paying their way. But the Billingtons decided, well, it sucks, but we're looking for a better life. So they get on the Mayflower and they start coming over to the New World. Now, apparently, even when they were on the fucking ship, this family started causing problems. Now, they were not pilgrims and in the sense of being like religious separatists. They were actually Catholics, I believe, so they didn't really get along with the separatists. And the family didn't really like the separatists too much.
Those damn
like when
idolaters.
when they got on the Mayflower, they found out that like 50 of the people on the Mayflower were these religious people that were like going and they were like, oh man, fuck this. And so there was like some, tension there. Because they were, Church of England. Actually, they weren't Catholics. They were Church of England. But, so that kind of ended up happening. So while they're on the ship, apparently one of the sons, I don't know if he did it on purpose or accidentally, but Francis, the son, he fired a gun near an uncovered barrel of gunpowder.
Oh, shit.
And set fire to a cabin in the ship. Now, I've seen it reported that it was an accident, like he just was fucking around and he didn't know what happened. I've also seen it reported that the family were trying to, like, do like a mutiny type of thing. So I don't know which one is the true, but they pretty much almost burned the fucking ship down like before they even got here. So they were causing trouble before they even got
Usually
here.
the less glamorous option is the true one.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Probably,
I feel like probably it wasn't a mutiny. Maybe the kid was just fucking around with the gun. He's like, I'm going to fire again. I wasn't really thinking about it.
Back in those days, it was all, like I said, matchlocks and black powder. So loading a weapon and getting the match primed, which is a damn it's a burning rope filled with fucking gunpowder on the end of a serpentine, which is kind of like they didn't have a hammer, they had a serpentine. And then firing it, all that whole process made sparks.
Yeah.
Shit ton of them.
That's what happened in this situation.
He may have not fired, he might have just lit the match, which is just the rope burning. You don't know.
Yeah.
But
yeah, right by a big old barrel of gunpowder.
Maybe he did decide to shoot it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's target practice. Like I said, that these are pop guns. I wasn't joking.
Yeah.
On your average matlock, the pressure was very low. The barrels were very thin, for the most part, and weak by today's standards. Some of them were thicker, but the muzzle velocity was very low. So chances are a lot of this shit was like maybe 30 to 50 caliber, ball, moving slow, like 500 feet a second, for you ballistic guys, you know what I'm talking about. It didn't even sound like a gunshot. It was more like boom. Real low pressure, boom. But it made a lot of sparks, a lot of burning embers. It's very sensible. It sounds crazy. Why would you shoot a gun next to the, you know what I mean? The gun really wasn't shit back then. They weren't very powerful.
Yeah.
That's why you had to have big caliber with a big heavy ball, because everything moves so slowly. This is before
it's like, I'm going to shoot you. It's like,
yeah, it moved pretty slow.
He's like, I'm just going to move over here.
It was kind of like you were just throwing it real hard.
Just throw the bullet at you.
Yeah, it's kind of like you were just throwing it real hard. Because it was before smokeless powder, you know what I mean? It just couldn't propel a projectile to high velocities. The gunshots didn't sound the same, made a lot of smoke. So a young guy might think, well, I'm just going to shoot this shit. It doesn't go through anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of understandable.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the kid was probably just fucking around. Yeah. It was probably like a little hellion or whatever.
Yeah,
I think he was like old, like maybe a teenager. But
now later on, flintlocks got better, and they could safely carry a bigger powder charge of black powder. So velocities did go up over time.
Yeah.
Firearms were around for a long time. I think they first appeared like in the 1200s, real crude ones, 1300s. I think it might have been. But they were the worst weapon on the battlefield until like the 1800s.
Yeah.
That's when they got good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so whether or not it was an accident or whether he was like trying to blow the ship up or what is he didn't blow the ship up, but he almost did. Like he caused like a huge fire. That's the son. Now, as soon as they land in Plymouth, the settlement they established, the dad, John Billington, starts causing trouble again. He basically lands, he starts complaining and kind of giving speeches about how what they called discontented and mutinous speeches. So I guess he was basically saying, we're our own shit. We're not going to do this labor thing that, like, even though we signed the shit and said that we were going to come over and they were going to pay and we were going to work for them, it's like, fuck that. We're not going to do that. It's like, we don't want to live in this, colony that's governed by these like religious separatists, because that's not our deal. So he was basically like very vocal about saying like, I don't like this shit, and getting into a lot of trouble. So, you know what I mean? So he was like bitching and complaining about that. He did sign the Mayflower Compact, but I don't know if he did it reluctantly or whatever, but he made it very clear that he was just not about it, and this was just not happening. So there were other people that were kind of like in the same boat. So there were some kind of like, I don't want to say treasonous, but they didn't want to go along with what the colony was doing. So in March of 1620, Billington got in trouble again by insulting Miles Standish, who at the time was the colony's military advisor.
Who was a man. That was a real man, right?
Yeah. He basically like challenged his authority, which I don't know what that means exactly. Like maybe he just, I don't know,
he
said
didn't
he had
think
a
he should
small
be in
penis
charge.
or whatever. Yeah, he was basically like, so at that point they took him and he was sentenced to public humiliation by having his neck and feet tied together.
Yeah.
So now in 1623, I guess there was so much available land that they had, and the colonists like divided it. Like everybody that was there like got some. Now John Billington only got 3 acres, even though you were supposed to get an acre for every family member that you had. Now he had a wife and 2 kids, so he should have got 4. But apparently one of his sons, John, I think, who was the older one, he was living with this other guy who was named Richard Warren. So he actually only ended up getting 3 acres, and he was pissed off about that. He also got into trouble the year after that because he supposedly was like secretly supporting like other dissenters. There was like a little group of them who were like sending these letters back to England, like trying to undermine like members of the colony. Like they were doing like all this kind of like underhanded kind of shit. So, he was like accused of being in with them, but they didn't really have any proof. So he kind of got away with it. Now, in 1625, Billington got into some beef with this guy named Robert Cushman. Nobody really knows what the argument was about, but apparently these two like really fucking hated each other, or like one guy really, he really hated Cushman. William Bradford, who was the governor, he wrote in a letter to Cushman. He said, this is what he said. He said, Billington still rails against you and threatens to arrest you. I know not wherefore. So nobody knew why there was this big beef between them. He is a knave, and so will live and die.
There he goes.
You know what I mean?
That's some heavy shit talking for British people.
That's what I mean. Knave, that was probably a bad thing. That was probably calling somebody like a fucking ass clown or something like that back then.
Bad. Yeah.
So 1626, the colonists took over the plantation, after they'd kind of been negotiating with the investors or whatever. So they divided the land and the cattle, like, between everybody. Now, John Billington got the smallest allotment. I guess a lot of people maybe didn't like him. I don't really know why he got the smallest allotment, but that was another thing that he was, like, super pissed off about. Even though he did get a house, he got 63 acres. He got, like, some of the shares of the livestock, because everybody got that. But for some reason, he got, like, the smallest, even though he got, 63 acres, that's a lot. But he got less than other people for whatever reason. So he was pissed off about that. He was also pissed off because he wasn't like super up in the social hierarchy because he wasn't a member of the church. So he was a little bit of an outsider. He couldn't run for like public office or anything like that because him and Governor Bradford didn't get along. So he was kind of like frustrated by this whole situation. Then it seemed like it kind of came to a head when his older son John died when he was, I think he was only 25 years old. Nobody knows. I don't know if he died of natural causes, if he was murdered or something like that. It's not recorded. There may have been an illness because the guy that he was living with also died right around the same time. So they think there was some kind of disease or something. So all of these kind of like things, his son dying, like his kind of like bad status, like in the colony and shit like that. So it seemed like it kind of like all bubbled up to the surface. So around this time, John Billington gets into another beef with another guy named John Newcomen, who was one of his neighbors. Again, no one knows what exactly the dispute was about, but apparently it was pretty rancorous. So in 1630, apparently Billington was out hunting and came across John Newcomen, like just walking through the field or whatever, and decided, I'm going to shoot that motherfucker.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And he shot him.
That's it, yeah.
So apparently he just he saw his enemy, I guess.
Snap.
Like, and he just said, yeah, I'm just going to shoot that motherfucker. And he fucking shot him.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So this guy, he actually did get caught, and it was all in the letters and everything like that. So he actually did end up getting executed for the murder. And he is considered the first murderer in the American colonies.
There you go.
John Billington, guy that came over on the fucking Mayflower, and I bet they never taught you that in school.
Yeah,
like some of these Mayflower.
Coming over on the Mayflower, knocking motherfuckers off.
That's exactly what he did. And like I said, he caused some trouble before that too.
Yeah.
Now, some people have said that, other people in the colonies really seemed to like him and thought he was a cool dude and everything like that. So maybe some of them said, well, maybe he had a reason for killing them. Maybe that motherfucker was an asshole.
Yeah.
You don't know. So you're only seeing things from like people that didn't like him particularly. But it did seem like him and his family were kind of like causing a lot of trouble, like even before they came over. So he was actually hanged in September of 1630, the first official.
It was a wild time.
Executed murderer, yeah.
It was a wild time.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's always a wild time.
That's true. Now, after he 6 years after he was executed, his wife Eleanor was also found guilty of slander, like slander against a dude who was like a church deacon.
Yeah, lying bitch.
And she got sentenced to sit in the stocks. She got whipped, and she had to pay a £5 fine.
God damn it.
Yeah. And also his surviving son Francis also got a couple of small fines, but nothing like super major. So they were all kind of like a little bit.
Yeah, needless to say, the colonies were almost kind of like totalitarian theocracies. A lot of people don't really, but that's basically what they were. You're not talking about American democracy at this point. America is not even a fucking glimmer in these people's eyes yet, as we know it. Really, like I would say, probably the first American characters were guys like John Smith and Miles Standish. They were kind of American frontiersmen type guys.
Yeah.
John Smith a lot too. Remember him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He did a lot of wild shit.
Yeah.
But the average person in these colonies was like they were still back in England.
Yeah, definitely.
They had that same mentality. It took a long time for Americans to emerge.
Well, that was another thing that I found interesting, because when I was looking up shit about John Billington, the first murderer, then I kind of came across this other thing, because apparently, and I didn't really know this, but apparently like criminal records from the Plymouth colony from that time period are actually very well recorded. Like they wrote fucking everything down, and it all survived. So apparently after or right before the Civil War, they all got published, like in this big like 12 volume thing, and they've been like republished a lot of times since. So I went through there and like read like all these PDFs of like all these fucking crimes from like the 1600s and stuff like that. It's like super fascinating, but it's like, so apparently this is what I found interesting about the crime and everything like that, because like I said, it was still very much based on English law when they came over. So 1636, the Plymouth colony actually like codified what constituted, a crime that they would put you to death for. And there were 5 of them. Willful murder was the first one. The second one was forming a solemn compact with the devil by way of witchcraft. So, willful burning of ships or houses. Arson, in other words. Sodomy, rape, and buggery. Also adultery.
Yeah.
Although,
buggery. How do you define... we know what sodomy is. We know what rape is. What the fuck is buggery?
Yeah, what's the difference between buggery and
What the
sodomy?
fuck is
I
buggery?
thought buggery and sodomy were the same thing.
I don't. Maybe not. Maybe buggery is just like some kind of weird molestation.
I don't know. I always thought buggery was like butt fucking,
That's
just
what I
like
thought,
sodomy.
but there must be some more to that story.
Yeah, now
There
I'm
must
gonna.
be more to that.
Now I'm gonna have to go to Google and look up
buggery.
buggery.
What exactly is buggery?
Maybe that constituted like animal fucking too, because you
Maybe.
got in trouble for that
You're
also.
buggering those animals.
Maybe that's what it was. Maybe
Yeah.
that was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Now, even though adultery was punishable by death at the time, in the Plymouth colony, they actually never did execute anyone for adultery. However, in Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1644, a woman named Mary Latham was hanged for adultery for cheating on her husband,
Cheating
William
bitch.
Latham, who was also on the Mayflower.
Cheating bitch.
Also in Plymouth Colony in 1639, there was a woman named Mrs. Mary Mendame, I guess is how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
She was convicted of quote-unquote uncleanness with an Indian.
Oh.
Tinson.
But that was supposed to be.
They didn't kill her, though. They whipped her. They, like, went through the town streets and whipped her. And then she had to wear a badge, just like in The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, you guys. She had to wear, like, a thing on her clothes that said AD for adultery.
Uncleanness with Indians.
Uncleanness.
The thing is that.
She's getting freaky with the natives.
Yeah, but what was that exactly?
Yeah.
Was she blowing him?
Well, I don't know.
Because you could get married in most of those colonies
Yeah.
to an Indian. Why? Well, it was something bad. She did something bad with this Indian, and they saw it.
Wherever they do it,
was
they were just
something
like
that-
out in the middle
yeah,
of the
it
fucking
was
village or
something
whatever.
that Christians did.
I don't even care. I'm just gonna choose
something
that's me. Like
yeah,
that.
something Christians didn't accept. She must have called him. Maybe she was blowing him.
Like
They
in
saw him
public or something.
blowing him somewhere out in the woods. Oh, that's it. We had to whip that bitch.
Man, you go, Mary.
What'd they do to her? They whipped
She's a
her.
freak wild.
They whipped her.
Well, yeah, they whipped her.
Yeah.
They made her wear like the adultery, like you
Yeah.
had to have it on your cloth, like on your sleeve or
They
on the back of your
slut-shamed her.
dress.
They
The slut shaming.
slut-shamed her, yeah.
And they said that if she went out without that badge on, that they would brand it onto
Brand
her
on
forehead.
her head?
Although
Okay.
they never did that because I guess she
I
always
wonder how long
wore
that
it.
shit lasted for.
I don't know. Now, there was also, like, in 1641, there was an affair between a single guy whose name was Thomas Bray and a married woman whose name was Anne Linsford. And they found out, like, the, powers that be found out about that. They both got a public whipping.
Yeah.
And they also had to wear the badge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You sluts.
So, yeah. So, I think, like, as the time went on, because, like I said, adultery technically was punishable by death. They could execute you. And then one woman did get executed in Massachusetts. However, in Plymouth, it seemed like after a while, maybe because it was so widespread, and it was like, we can't kill everybody. There won't be anybody left. Like, if we kill everybody for adultery. So, I feel like the punishment got a less severe. So you would have to wear the badge thing. You would have to be like publicly whipped and everything like that. Be like, look, this is bad. I'm sorry, we're just going to do this. Yeah. So they had to do that.
Yeah. Now don't for one second think this has anything to do with the American Constitution. If you guys are aliens from another planet,
Well, this is way before
this is way
that.
before the
This is
United
way
States.
before that.
These are religious.
This is like 100 years before that.
Yeah. These are religious colonies.
Yeah.
Like I said, this is religious law.
Yeah.
They were a trip. They were a fucking real trip.
Yeah. They had all kind of
Yeah.
interesting ideas.
Yeah.
I had to mention this one just because this name is so funny. So in 1662, there's this guy named Thomas Bird. He got double whippings.
Yeah.
Because apparently he committed, and this was the quote, several adulterous practices and attempts. So I guess he was
Yeah.
like, so he got punished for like doing it and for trying to do it and
Yeah.
not succeeding, I guess.
Man, I wonder if they could punish you for thinking about it. Imagine
Probably.
that. Imagine that.
Probably.
I saw that look on your face. You were thinking
Yeah,
about
that's what. Well, probably they did.
it. Yeah.
Well, the best.
Spiritual evidence. That's
Yeah.
what they call it.
That's what. Well, they did that. They did that.
Spiritual evidence.
I see the ghost and she's flying around. She's tormenting me. Oh my god. That's how fucking.
Saw
That's
the look
how all
in your
this.
eye. You wanted this booty. You're guilty.
That's what I mean. Well, the
Yeah.
best thing about this is that the woman that he was fucking around with, that he was attempting to fuck around with,
Yeah.
her name was Hannah Bumpass.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Which I was like, did they make that up?
I got to see that for myself.
Hannah Bumpass.
I got to see that for myself.
She also got sentenced to whipping for yielding to him. This is the quote: for yielding to him and not making such resistance against him as she ought.
Okay.
Victim
yeah, that's
blaming.
A good one. That's a good one. That's a good
Victim
one.
blaming.
Didn't
They said
fight
you should
hard
have fought
enough.
harder.
Didn't fight. That's like some shit out of Saudi Arabia.
You must have wanted it.
Yeah, you wanted it. Shit.
That's what I mean. But then it turned. But she
pretending to resist.
Yeah, she didn't fight him hard enough.
Didn't fight his ass hard enough.
And I guess he like got the booty, and then so she got blamed for it too. She got whipped. However, it was kind of like a wash because I guess Thomas Bird also had to pay her £10 for. The quote was satisfaction for the wrong he hath done her. Satisfaction. £10 for the satisfaction. Well, that was a lot of money back then.
To satisfy the wrong he did.
I guess so. Yeah, so I mentioned the first person executed for murder, who was John Billington. There was also these 3 guys. Their names were Arthur Peach, Thomas Jackson, Richard Stinnings, and there was a 4th guy named Daniel Cross. Now, this is interesting because these guys were actually convicted of murdering an Indian, whose name was, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, but his name was Penawananquis.
Okay.
This was in 1638, and they set upon him and were going to rob him, but then they got caught. Now Daniel Cross got away.
Did they kill the Indian?
Yeah.
Okay.
They did. But the other 3 were convicted to death by hanging. So they all got hanged, other than the guy that got away. So I thought that was interesting because Plymouth was essentially saying killing a Native American is just like killing an English person. Murder, they didn't distinguish, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Well, that matches up with everything that I've heard about that period. Everything, and this whole fucking cartoonish idea that white people show up and just start an Indian genocide. That's not how that shit happened.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's more complicated than that.
Even the religious colonies recognized Indians as God's children.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what the deal was about the dirtiness with the Indian. I don't know. Uncleanness.
Yeah, what is that about?
I don't think it was
uncleanness.
It was she was doing something to an Indian word. She wasn't married to.
Yeah.
That's what because you know how they were about adultery. It had to be something like that. But it wasn't normal sex.
Yeah, it must have been some nasty. It was
something that they hadn't thought of. So there was no.
There's what is this that's going on?
Yeah, so it's some kind of
It must be bad.
It's something they hadn't thought of. Was she giving him a hand job? Or was she blowing him?
See, I would have thought. I mean, hand jobs and blow jobs. You would think that has gone back to the beginning of time.
It was something
they
that
figured
an
that
English Protestant hadn't
thought of,
or they hadn't thought of a punishment for. It was
sounding.
Maybe it was sounding. Sounding.
We were talking about that a lot.
Or edging, something like that, something like that.
Tossing someone's salad, something like that.
It was something that wasn't really sex, but had a dirtiness to it.
Maybe.
Titty fucking the dude.
Maybe she gave him a Cleveland steamer.
I don't know what is that. I never heard of that one.
Google it.
I don't want to know.
Actually, don't Google it.
Maybe she was titty fucking a dude. It was something that wasn't.
I'm just saying, maybe it was.
It was something that was technically not.
I think it was poop. I think it was.
Maybe
because you know how people are into poop. It's a Cleveland steamer. It's like taking a dump on their chest.
Oh yeah, that's nasty.
That's what I mean. Well, some people are.
I doubt that. I doubt even.
I'm not.
I doubt they could think of that.
I don't know, man. There's freaky people in every age.
Maybe it was a golden shower.
Okay, maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
I can see how they would think that was it's like you're peeing on the
yeah, maybe
and he's into it.
Maybe that's dirtiness.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was.
Maybe it was.
It was some golden shower action.
It was some water sports.
They
were engaging in water sports. I don't know.
It was something like that.
Let us know. But yeah, so the fact that they actually executed 3 guys for attempting to rob and killing a Native American, I thought that was kind of interesting in Plymouth. There was also in 1648, this is fucked up, this woman named Alice Bishop was hanged for slashing the neck of her 4-year-old daughter Martha with a knife while Martha was sleeping.
Damn.
So she murdered her 4-year-old kid. So shit like that's been shit like this. These Puritans, these aren't Puritans. These are Pilgrims. But everybody's like, oh, these little Pilgrims, they come over with their little buckled shoes and their little hats and everything. With the Thanksgiving. And they were doing this kind of serial killer shit.
Yeah, she malfunctioned.
No shit. Holy crap.
Maybe she went crazy.
I guess so. So there were actually, like I said, they never convicted anyone of arson because apparently that wasn't a problem. Because, like I said, you could be put to death for burning someone's house or their ship or whatever because that shit wasn't cool. But as far as I know, they never convicted anybody of that. However, there were 2 witchcraft trials in Plymouth Colony. And this was way before the Salem witchcraft trials. These were in, those were in 1692. This was way before that. However, both of the Plymouth Colony witchcraft trials ended in not guilty verdicts. And the people that were accusers were actually got fined for making false accusations. So this was like before that whole shit had taken hold, where the whole spiritual evidence and everything. So there was a whole thing, just like, she's a witch. And they're like, nah, you got to pay. Just stop it. So, yeah. Now, this is interesting, too. In 1637, I found this. John Alexander and Thomas Roberts were charged with and convicted of lewd behavior and unclean carriage, one with another. So...
yeah, there was some buggery.
Yeah, there's
some
some
homosexuality going on.
There you go. By often spending their seed one upon another.
Oh, spending the seed,
which was proved both by witness and their own confession. So somebody saw them.
Spending the seed one upon the other.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. So someone caught them. Someone caught the gay men. And they got in trouble. And I love this too. It's like the said Alexander found to have been formerly notoriously guilty that way.
Yeah.
Like, I guess.
He was notorious.
Because he was a gay guy.
He was notorious.
Back in the day. That must have sucked back then. They're like, oh, crap.
That was the original American Oscar Wilde.
I guess so. And he's like, and seeking to allure others thereunto. So he's trying to like recruit other people into the gay mafia
or whatever. Bitch. He was a hot little bitch. Yeah.
So he didn't get executed though. He actually got whipping. Yeah. And then he got burned on the shoulder with like a hot iron. Okay. And then they kicked him out of the colony. Yeah, but they didn't execute him though. The other guy got sentenced to a whipping. But he didn't get banished, but he wasn't ever allowed to own any land ever again.
Okay.
They said unless he manifest better desert, which I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means.
Unless he just like stops having butt sex with other dudes.
Manifest better desert would probably means unless he turns his shit around.
That's I'm just like desert. Like I don't understand like where that like etymology like came from. In 1642, a 16-year-old boy, Thomas Granger, who was a servant of the Mayflower passenger Love Brewster, was caught and later admitted to bestial acts with various of Brewster's livestock.
Damn!
He was executed, and the animals were executed too.
Well, they enjoyed it.
I saw the look on that cow's face. He was into it.
Yeah.
They used to do that. They used to execute like the fucking animal.
Well, yeah, they thought that was an abomination.
It's in Leviticus.
Yeah, it's an abomination. So
yeah,
that's what they're gonna do.
That's fucking fucked up. Yeah. In 1660, Thomas Atkins was tried for incest with his daughter Mary. The jury found him not guilty of incest, which was a capital crime also, but sentenced him to whipping for incestuous attempts toward his daughter. So I guess
he didn't do it. He was going.
He was just going after her. Yeah. And I guess she fought him off enough. Well, I guess because also
he did do it, but they didn't want to execute him.
They didn't want to execute him, and I think that there were mitigating circumstances because they did mention that he was like intoxicated with drink, quote unquote. Okay. So maybe they said, well, he only gets incestuous when he's drunk, so maybe we'll just like let it slide this time. I don't fucking know.
It was a weird situation back in those days. Usually, they all slept in the same bed.
They did, because it's like they just had little bitty houses.
Yeah, they had little bitty houses. They slept in the same bed, and they'd sometimes put boards in between the brothers and the sisters, so they wouldn't like molest each other. So no genitalia
could be mashing together.
It was a weird culture.
That is very weird.
It was a weird culture at a weird time.
That is.
And another thing that was weird is that these are one bedroom dwellings. There's this idea of some kind of prudery going on. Not at all. These were one-bedroom dwellings.
Well, yeah, you had to fuck in front of your whole family.
And they were all screwed in front of each other. Yeah. It just...
like I said, you didn't have a choice.
They grew up watching each other screw each other. Yeah. So there was no expectation of privacy.
Yeah.
Weird.
It is very weird to think about nowadays. Yeah. But I guess it's weird to think that, like... I guess most of human civilization has been like that.
It was like that, right.
So like the perception that we have now about having privacy is like that's a fairly recent invention.
Yeah, we're retroactively, you know what I mean, going backwards in time and trying to place modern sensibility on them.
Yeah.
They weren't like us.
No, not at all.
Well, yeah, in many private aspects they weren't like us.
Yeah.
Because they just weren't raised like that.
Yeah, you just, imagine, you just got used to like a totally different culture.
Imagine growing up seeing your parents have sex.
Ugh.
all the time.
I know.
We're hearing it.
And it would just be like a thing.
Like, yeah,
You wouldn't even...
Yeah.
You wouldn't know any different.
No.
Because everyone would have the same experience. There's like, yep, that's what happens.
Yeah, and then there was like you and like 4 of your siblings all in the same fucking bed.
Yeah. That's
Weird
really,
shit.
That's really weird. Like, okay, now this I thought was really interesting. They're saying like, you know, you kind of feel like, I feel like a lot of people have a perception of like anti-smoking laws and that's like a very recent invention. But no, they had that shit back then too.
They were prudish about that
In
shit.
1637, Plymouth Colony enacted the first anti-smoking law.
See what good that did.
You got a 12 pence fine.
They banned smoking.
Yes, you got a 12 pence fine for smoking
It didn't work.
in a street, barn, outhouse, or highway, and for smoking anywhere further than 1 mile from your house.
Needless to say, banning smoking didn't work.
No, it didn't.
No.
And then if you got caught a second time, then the fine increased to 2 shillings.
Shit, man. Back in the fucking, I think it was in the 1300s, they banned crossbows. See how good that is. That didn't do much, you know. They said it was a weapon of mass destruction.
I guess who's wielding it would make a difference.
It was too damn dangerous for the battlefield. Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so we've probably gone on long enough about Thanksgiving. And I hope that all of you guys who are in the United States, anyway, if you celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope you have a good one.
Yeah.
You know.
And for those of you who are not
eat all the food.
Those of you who are not in the United States understand that Thanksgiving is a universal phenomenon. Okay.
Well, they have them in other countries.
You can eat your ass off no matter where the fuck you live. And even if you're in, like, you know what I mean, the alien lands of Europe and stuff, you can kind of, it's like on another planet, all right? You can rest assured that some of your people are over here doing all this shit. So
yeah,
in
just
a way,
make all the food and eat it all.
Yeah. One day you too can be American.
And eat all the food.
If you try hard enough.
And be as fat as we are.
If you try hard enough.
Seriously, it's like I said, it's just going to be me and him and the cats probably.
With so much fucking food.
We're just going to, and we were just discussing because, you know, we have to go to the store again. We already went like on our trip, but we forgot a couple things. We have to get whipped cream for the pies. We have to get shit for green bean casserole because he just decided he wanted that.
Yeah, and I'm going to make some of that cream corn. I'm going to make some.
So he decided he's going to make the Brazilian cream corn. He has to like ask his mom like for the recipe though because you don't know it by heart.
Well, it's online. It's just Brazilian style cream corn.
It is really good.
It's just whole kernel corn with condensed milk based cream in it. Yeah. And it's not like American creamed corn where you take corn and then you like whip it up.
Yeah.
The kernels are whole and it's in a cream sauce.
Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, really good.
We had it last year.
It's kind of sweet.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit sweet with some corn flavor in it. It fits with Thanksgiving real well. That's my Brazilian influence on Thanksgiving. Yeah. And you can find that recipe online.
Like I said, you guys
corn.
tell me like what your weird like Thanksgiving, because like I said, my Thanksgiving, like I'm from a very like traditional like, you know, family, like England, Irish, stuff like that. So we always did like we even had like the pickle tray with all the relish on it and shit like that everybody has with all the different pickles, like for whatever. Yeah. And we just very traditional. We didn't have anything weird. But it seems like a lot of like other parts of the country, like especially like in the Midwest where there's like a lot of people like Norwegian and stuff like that, like they seem to have a lot of different stuff. So now I'm like kind of interested because I'm really into like food history. We still need to do a show about.
I'm going to show you another Mississippi thing. You make a cornbread stuffing.
Yeah.
Okay, the dressing or stuffing, but I don't want to talk about it.
And it's the same thing, really.
It's got the onion. It's got all the same shit you normally put.
Onion, celery.
Sage and all that. Onions and celery. But you add a whole bunch, like a whole handful, of finely chopped dill pickles into it. And it's good.
I'm down. I love pickles.
She's had it. It's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's good.
I love pickles.
You can't really tell a huge difference.
You can put pickles. I put pickles on my salad.
It just adds kind of like a seasoning to it. Yeah. It's like a weird... Although I think a lot of people do it.
I think they do too. I think that's pretty common.
I think it's pretty
common.
I
said, it's like a lot of the shit that I grew up with, I didn't know how common it was. But then, like I said, I was reading the Wikipedia page where they were talking about different regional variations. And I was like, pretty much what we had at Thanksgiving dinner was like
super common.
The standard.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like even the kind of stuffing that we made. Like I said, we had the pickle tray. We had like the kinds of pies that we had, like all that kind of shit. Very, very, very traditional.
Yeah. You know what?
We didn't have anything weird.
Just you talking about that. You know what popped in my mind?
What?
Doing fucking sweet potatoes too.
Okay.
Oh man.
This is just too much. There's only 2 of us, man. I can't eat all this
Maybe
food.
we'll just look at the sweet potatoes and get some of them.
We'll write it on the list. Write it on the list.
All right. We'll just see.
But maybe
we'll just get a couple.
Basically, like I said, we're both on diets, so it's like
we're on diet.
We've been like starving for like several days, and I'm just starving up to that. Now Thanksgiving Day, I feel like that's the only day of the year when you're just allowed. That's the whole point of Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
At least in the United States.
I'm a binge.
It nowadays is you just eat as much as you can possibly eat.
And you watch MST fucking.
And you watch the MST 3K Turkey Day Marathon, which they now stream on YouTube.
And then you sleep.
And then you sleep, and then you
go back
you
and
have a
eat
nap,
some more.
and then you go and eat some more.
You
leave all the spread out. We do this every year because you start early.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to start at like noon or 1. I mean, you have to put the turkey in like really early in the morning, obviously, to like cook it. But we're making a bunch of stuff ahead of time. So like, by about 2:00, you go in there and you get a big fucking plate full, maybe 2 plates full, or 3 if it's you.
I can eat a lot.
I'll sit there and watch MST and stuff like that. And then you'll be like, oh man, carb crash.
Yeah.
And then you take a nap. And then after a couple hours, you wake up from your nap, and then you're like, man, I'm going to go make a sandwich.
Yeah.
I'm going to go get another plate.
It's a food coma.
And I'm going to go get some pie. It is.
It's a food coma.
I'm going to like, it's so good, and yet my stomach will hurt, and I will just feel ill and nauseous.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's kind of worth it.
Yeah.
But then almost better than that is like the next day, and then you can have like a sandwich, like with the turkey.
Yeah.
And dressing and mayonnaise and shit.
You can do whatever you want for the next 2 weeks out of there. You just making stuff out of there.
I know, I'm looking.
Everybody's doing the same thing at their house if they're
pretty much
if they're American.
It's weird because I feel like Thanksgiving is something that most people celebrate in some way or another, and it seems it's one of the, because Christmas is kind of all over the place. Like some people do this.
I kind of like it better than Christmas now.
Yeah.
Christmas has presents, but
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, Thanksgiving, like I said, I like how simple it is.
Yeah.
It's mostly just about food.
It's about eating yourself into a damn
You just
coma.
eat yourself into a coma.
Yeah.
And everyone else is doing the same thing, so you don't have any responsibilities that day because
pouring gravy on everything.
Like almost everyone is off work except for all the poor people that have to work getting ready for like fucking Black Friday and all that shit. I wish that shit hadn't happened.
Yeah.
But so that sucks. But it's I know no one's gonna bother me for work. It's like because everyone's going to see their family or whatever, and you can just like lay around and eat and not.
For Brazilian people, it's kind of like Carnival.
Yeah.
It's like the American version of Carnival, except it's about food.
Yeah.
Brazilian Carnival is about booty.
Thanksgiving is not so much about
celebration of booty. Yeah. Girls on floats with booty. Yeah.
That should also be the title of something. Girls on floats with booty.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to write a poem called that.
Man, when I was in Brazil during one of those fucking carnivals, it got so fucking bad that even the news crews covering Carnival were drunk. They just started videotaping each other and broadcasting that shit live. And then they would like zoom in on girls' booties.
Look at this one.
It's like the entire.
Oh my god, that's awesome.
It's like one of those damn Star Trek.
It's like
episodes.
This show if it goes on too long.
It's like a Star Trek episode where they said, you know what I mean, the civilization collapses for like it goes on for like 4 or 5 days or some shit like that. You know? Civilization collapses. You can't even buy anything because they're just drunk or hungover, or they're looking at booty and dancing, and it's wild.
See, that's cool though because I feel like.
Makes Mardi Gras look like nothing.
Well, I feel like every culture needs that. So, I mean, especially one, because I feel like in the U.S. particularly, we're very
blowing
like...
off steam.
Yeah, because it's like we're very like tightly wound. It's like, you know, we work too hard. There's no vacation time and shit like that. So I feel like that's something that a lot of cultures should
Carnival
have. Just kind of
in Brazil
everyone's...
is the time of the year when most of the AIDS is transmitted.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. But yeah, I mean, like you said, there's something very nice about... I mean, I love Christmas. Yeah. I mean, Halloween's my favorite, obviously. But I mean, I love Christmas. I like all the iconography around it and everything like that. But there's something really nice about Thanksgiving. Like I said, it's just a very simple... I mean, a lot of people watch football and shit, but I don't do that. Like, I watch MST, but you know, it's basically just based around food and like hanging out with your family and shit like that. You don't have to go any place. No. You don't have to... I mean, you got to cook, but... No. You know... You just like lay around and eat. You can eat as much as you want and no one will judge. No one will be
Yeah.
like, hey, man, get your fat ass away from that. So like no one will do that on one day of the year. And that's pretty fucking awesome.
And some people have eggnog. Some people have eggnog.
Oh, but that's another thing you're going to have to add to the list. You have some eggnog left in there.
I got some in there, yeah.
And you have the one that already has alcohol in it. So
already.
you don't
It's
even
got
have
rum
to
in it
add
already.
alcohol. Because, I mean,
Yeah.
you don't even have to add the rum separate.
Yeah, I got a little
It's
bit.
already in there.
Yeah, it's
we got
good
it at
shit.
the liquor store.
Yeah.
All right. So, again, hope you guys enjoyed this rambling Thanksgiving special. And if you are celebrating Thanksgiving, please have a good one out there. And be safe and everything like that. Like I said, if you like the show, like, share, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Go to our Patreon page if you'd like to support the show. Or go to our blog, 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com. And there's a button in the sidebar to a PayPal account if you'd like to give a one-time donation. It would be much appreciated. This has been episode 171. We will see you next time. Happy Thanksgiving. Bye.